Alright everyone, welcome to another movie reading, this one for The Irishman. And yes, you have heard me correctly. This is the movie script reading of The Irishman. This is not the movie. You're going to have to buy it or rent it if you want to actually watch the movie. I really enjoyed making this one. It was one of my favorite movies of 2019. Like this video so other people can see it, and if you want to be notified when I release other movie readings, subscribe below, but don't forget to hit the bell because just subscribing will not show you when I release new movie readings. Alright, this is The Irishman. Screenplay by Steven Zaillian, based on the book I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt. We see a handheld video image of a gold watch on a wrist and distinctive ring made from a gold coin on a finger. The image, shot by someone in the driver's seat of a parked car, moves up to the face of a man wearing a watch and ring, Frank Sheeran. He's about 80, sitting in the passenger seat. A couple of aluminum canes lean next to him. "That's the house? You sure?" Frank nods, but that's it. The video camera zooms past him, frames a shot of a wood-shingled house, and then pulls back out, and refocuses on him. It's a very quiet street. Nothing from Frank. "Let's go have a look." "I'm not getting out of the car. I brought you here, that's enough." "We gotta go into the house, Frank. We come all this way." Frank looks directly at the video camera for the first time, and it's a look so quietly menacing, even with his eyes behind aviator sunglasses, that the camera recoils slightly. "Alright, fine. Stay in the car." The video image jostles as the guy with it gets out on the driver's side, widens to show the quiet street, and then focuses on the house again. We notice now there's another car in the driveway and a realty sign. In the car, looking down again, Frank listens to the guy's footsteps on the porch, a knock on the door of the house, the door opening, and the door closing again. Only then does he look up at it. Later that night, handheld video image of Frank again, wider this time, turned half away from the camera in a motel room. He seems very disturbed. "Frank, I took you there. What do you want now?" "It's not what I want, it's what you want." "What do I want?" "You know what you want." "I do?" "You want me to say you stand by what you told me." "I told you I did." "I didn't have the camera." Frank turns in his chair and looks at the camera. "You want me to say, I stand by what I told you." To the camera. "Yeah." Frank keeps looking at the camera, but doesn't say anything. "Frank, you want to do this." "How do you know what I want?" "You're telling me it's not what you want?" Frank just keeps looking at the camera without saying anything. Finally, "I'm tired. I want to go to bed." The camera keeps shooting him looking at it. "Shut it off." The video image stays focused on him for a moment more, and then snaps to black. Frank is alone in the motel room now, sitting at the desk in his pajamas. He has the video camera on it, and is looking at the playback of what the guy shot when Frank stayed in the car. The video. A slow pan of a dark room with no furniture in it. Light spills in as someone opens a blind. The camera finds a guy by the windows as he opens another one. "That's better, huh?" "That's fine, thanks." The video POV walks to the entry, pans to a short hallway leading to a kitchen doorway, turns completely around and looks at the closed front door, and then for some reason tilts down to look at the floor. Frank's voice as a voiceover. "It's usually a friend. Usually he's given no choice in the matter. Usually he doesn't even know why he's doing it." Exterior shot, street, during the day. A friend talks to a friend on a street corner. He walks up to you and gives you a tip on a race or a football game. Another friend climbs out of a car to allow the friend a more desirable front passenger seat. or tells you to sit in front with the better view. He'll take the back seat. Another friend sits at a kitchenette table while his balding friend cooks at a stove. Giancana got at fried eggs and sausage in olive oil for an old friend. Clothes on eggs and sausages crackling in olive oil. The idea is they shouldn't know what hit them. You don't want them to have that moment of panic where they realize what it is. 2 quick shots to the back of the heads of the friend on the street corner. The one in the car, the one in the kitchen. As Giancana slams into the stove, upending the frying pan, and falls to the floor, to black. Because they're your friend. Frank's house, 1975. A wedding invitation sits on a bureau next to Frank's gold watch. In this particular matter, the whole thing was built around the wedding. Frank puts the watch on his wrist. The gold ring on his finger is next to his wedding band. He begins packing a garment bag. He's much younger than when we last saw him, maybe 55. Bill Buffalino's daughter was getting married in Detroit. Bill was a Teamster lawyer, which meant he was a mob lawyer, which meant everyone from downtown would be there. Frank arranges luggage in the trunk of his Cadillac, leaving a space for more. Russell didn't want to fly. He wanted to take care of some business along the way. Business, in Russell's case, means one thing: collecting money. So we drive. Him and his wife Carrie, and me and Irene. While Frank's wife Irene talks on the kitchen phone to Russell's wife Carrie about what to wear, Frank draws a line on the AAA map. We'd take Highway 76 to 476 to Allentown, up to Wilkes Barre, and then west on 80 through the rest of Pennsylvania, across Ohio to Toledo, and then north on 75 to Detroit. Irene and Carrie smoke cigarettes on the sidewalk while Frank and Russell Bufalino add his and his wife's luggage to the trunk. Russell is about 15 years older than Frank. It would take 2 days with the business stops and all the cigarette breaks we'd have to make for our wives, since Russell didn't allow smoking in the car. Since that bet with Jimmy Blue Eyes on Lansky's boat they took out of Cuba when Castro kicked them out and took their casinos. A pack of cigarettes floats on the water. In the distance, a cabin cruiser motors away. Russell threw his cigarettes overboard and hasn't smoked since. So Jimmy Blue lost $25,000 on that. Frank drives along a city street with Russell in front and the women in the back. But Russell and Lansky and Giancana and Trafficante lost about $1 million a day on the amount of Castro, so maybe it was the memory of that, more than the smoke in the car, that irritated him. "Can we stop soon? We're not even on the highway, for Christ's sake." "You won't stop on the highway." The women smoke outside the car again. Russell considers the AAA map Frank marked up. Frank watches some kids in parochial uniforms playing soccer in the Catholic schoolyard. We didn't have soccer growing up. All we had to amuse ourselves was to fight, which I guess was good for us, since when our country needed soldiers, we were ready. American soldiers on a beach dig at the sand like sand crabs as mortars explode around them. One thing I could say for sure is the beach is not a place you want to be pinned down. Sunbathing on a towel? Okay. As Frank, 22, shovels at the sand, soldiers on both sides of him fall dead from rifle and mortar fire. An exploding shell spreads its shrapnel in an upward angle. If you can get down low, it flies over you. So this is what I recommend. Frank jumps into the hole he's made. Another soldier clambers out of a hole to grab his rifle. If you don't get down low, it cuts you in half. A blast hits the soldier reaching for the rifle and separates him at the waist. It's raining, and the beach looks empty, until we begin to descend beneath the surface level of the sand. A normal foxhole wouldn't protect you at Anzio. You had to dig deeper. We follow a ladder that leads us deep into a large foxhole buttressed with planks like in a mine. Still, the rain is causing mud cave-ins and suffocations. Frank pees into a helmet in the foxhole. If you left the hole in the daylight, snipers would pick you off. Where'd you think you'd go, anyway? He climbs a ladder just high enough to slosh the pee onto the beach. You ate out of cans, you played cards, you prayed, you promised to sin no more. An ominous, deep-throated, unrecognizable sound. At night, you get shelled by a piece of artillery the Germans kept camouflaged during the day. A shadowy hulk of machinery glides in the dark. They'd move it around on railroad tracks after dark when our planes were on the ground. Frank listens to the cannons roar from his foxhole. We called it the Anzio Express. Sounded like a freight train in the night sky. You knew when it hit, there'd be nothing left to send back home of the guys it landed on. The shell hits some men in one of the other foxholes, killing and burying them all at once. A long row of dead soldiers in a trench, some arriving fresh-faced recruits, are all but ignored by the veterans like Frank. We watched replacements march in and be carried out, sometimes on the same day. One of the new replacements lifts his head from the trench, only to have it shot off. It was like they found the bullets rather than the other way around. As Frank and his friends play cards in the trench, the new guys sit apart from them. They had to wonder why no one talked to them. You didn't talk to them because you knew they'd be dead soon and it would be easier if you didn't know their names. Frank eats out of a can in the trench. We couldn't advance. All we could do was hold the position. 6,000 of us died doing that. Suddenly the German position is being hit from behind. Frank ventures up a ladder to cautiously peer over the lip of the foxhole. But then the main force finally broke through the other side and we were able to climb out of our holes. Frank and his foxhole survivors have rounded up the surviving German soldiers. After 411 days of combat, 122 of them at Anzio, you couldn't say we had had enough. Here these Germans are shooting at you, trying to kill you, and now they want to surrender. Some guys took this personally. Frank and a few other guys are going around executing German prisoners. So maybe you didn't understand what they were trying to say. Frank shoots a German begging for mercy in English. Or maybe they tried to escape. Frank shoots a German who is not trying to escape. I didn't mean a massacre. I'm talking about a handful. A couple handfuls. Frank hands a German prisoner a shovel and motions for him to dig. Our lieutenant said it made more sense for them to dig than us, but I didn't think they would. But they do. A line of German prisoners digging like Frank did on the beach. You wonder why anyone would dig their own grave. What's someone going to do if you refuse? Shoot you? Frank watches as his Germans keep digging. I guess you cling to some hope that maybe the guy with the gun will change his mind by the time you're done. Or maybe you're happy for the few extra minutes of life. Or maybe you think, if you cooperate, you'll get a nice clean shot with less pain. I don't know. Frank's prisoner finishes digging his grave, and Frank shoots him. As he falls into the hole he dug, the Doris Day song, Que Sera Sera, begins and carries over. As the Americans come through a small Italian town, looking like something out of hell, Frank notices some of the people taking down little German flags and putting up little American ones. The song continues over. Frank lies on a bed, staring up at the ceiling of a cheap boarding house room. The army gives you $100 a month for 3 months. This seemed like a lot of money to me, but it isn't. It runs out, and then you're on your own. Frank sells his blood for $10 a pint at a blood bank. The song continues over. A fight breaks out between 2 guys at a dance hall. Frank and another bouncer throw them out. Coming back in, he notices a shy girl sitting on the wall. She notices him but looks away. They say good girls like bad boys. Frank and the shy girl are getting married. Her father doesn't look happy. My first wife, Mary, loved me, but her family hated me. They thought I was what they used to call shanty Irish, and that they were what they used to call lace, curtain Irish. Mary's father looks even less happy as they eat dinner in silence. An infant girl sits in a high chair. We didn't have any money, so we moved in with them. I wouldn't advise this if you could help it. The song ends. Swift's Meat Company. Frank and some others lug hindquarters across a loading dock and hang them in a refrigerated truck. Frank comes back out and the yard manager closes the truck's door, snaps an aluminum seal on the lock, and has the driver sign a paper on his clipboard. Frank watches. When the yard manager heads back to his office, Frank goes over to the driver. How did you get to be a driver? Apply at the local. If the roster's full, they'll put you on a list. Frank, in Italian. Okay to say I'm a friend of yours? Joey can tell by looking at Frank that he isn't Italian, but his accent isn't bad. Joey likes that. Where'd you learn to speak Italian? Italy. Irene Sheehan, in back with Carrie Buffalino, puts some lipstick on. They've finally made it out of Philly and onto Highway 276. As Frank drives, he regards the countryside. It's summer, lush and beautiful. Can we stop soon? Russell looks at Frank and sighs. Irene and Carrie smoke outside the car while Frank fills the tank. Russell buys some gum and candy and comes back out to where Frank is. Look where we are. Huh, I know. They regard the unremarkable surroundings like they weren't so unremarkable. A tractor-trailer roars past and... Back to the 1950s. Frank drives a truck along 476, the same highway he'll drive to Detroit on 25 years later with Russell and their wives. The engine starts making noises it shouldn't. The same gas station. Frank has the truck's hood open and stares in at the misfiring engine. Russell appears out of nowhere with some tools. Hey, what's the problem? I don't know. Something. Russell listens to it. It's the carburetor. He selects a number 7 wrench from his tools and begins making adjustments. Carburetor only does one thing. There's not much to it. A few moments later, the engine is sounding normal again. There you go. He wipes his hand on a rag, shakes Frank's hand, and heads off with his tools. Hey, what do I owe you? Russell waves back. Nothing. Puts his tools in the trunk of his car. Frank watches after him as the car drives away. I thought maybe he owned the place. He owned something. You could tell. Turns out he owned the whole road. We cut to the interior of a place called the Friendly Lounge. Frank hangs out with Joey and some other drivers, all Italians except him. Across the room, at another table, sits a group of low-level mob guys. Hey, you should meet Skinny. Frank and Joey get up and head for the other table. Skinny Razor owned the Friendly Lounge. He also pushed a little money. Loans, book, lotteries, nothing big. Joey introduces Frank to Skinny Razor, who shakes Frank's hand and makes room for him and Joey at his table. He got his name working at a butcher shop in South Philly. A place that specializes in chicken so fresh it's still alive. A younger, skinnier Skinny waits on a customer. The Italian ladies would come in, pick the chicken they wanted by looking at them in the cages, and Skinny would take out a straight razor and cut the chicken's throat. But now, Skinny is eating steak at his table. You like steak? I do, more than chicken. I deliver steak. Do you? I could deliver you steak. Could you? As loading dock workers carry hindquarters like Frank used to and hang them in his refrigerated truck, he signs for the load. It's summer. After your truck is loaded, the yard manager puts an aluminum seal on the lock and off you go. The yard manager slaps the seal on the lock. Frank backs up to the store's loading dock, climbs out, and joins another manager with the clipboard. When you get to where you're going, the manager there breaks the seal, and the meat is put in the refrigerators. The manager breaks the seal, and workers unload the hindquarters. Once the seal's broken, there's no way to put it back on, so don't even think about that. The same loading dock as before, but now there's snow on the ground. When winter comes, the yard manager isn't so anxious to leave the comfort of his own office. A heater glows in the yard manager's office as Frank signs for 25 hindquarters. So your offer to put the seal on the lock for him sounds pretty good to him. The yard manager hands Frank the seal. He crosses the freezing cold dock with it, shuts the door of the truck and reaches for the lock, but palms the seal instead. Now you can deliver, say, 5 of your 25 hindquarters to someone else. As Skinny's guys carry hindquarters into the back of the friendly lounge, he pays Frank some cash, and Frank puts the seal on the lock. Of course, you're 5 hindquarters short now, but it's just as cold where you're going as where you've been. The store manager rubs his gloves together and breaks the seal on the lock. So your offer to help the guys there sounds pretty good to them, too. Frank helps the dock guys carry the last of the 20 hindquarters to the store's refrigerators. They leave, but he stays behind. Now you take the 5 hindquarters from the left rail and hang them on the right rail with the new delivery. Back on the dock, the store manager signs for the shipment. 25 hindquarters. And Frank hops back into his truck. Of course, at inventory they'll see the shortage, but anyone could have taken them. They got no proof it was you. The manager warms his hands over his glowing heater, and the yard manager is never going to admit he was too lazy to go out in the cold and do his job in the first place. Skinny Razor and his mob friends enjoy a delicious and very inexpensive steak dinner, courtesy of Frank. But I got carried away one day. The store manager breaks the seal. The truck doors open, revealing no hindquarters inside. Frank looks mystified. What the fuck? What the fuck is this? I don't know. Maybe the guys forgot to load it. Everyone on the dock looks at Frank. You didn't notice you were driving a light truck? I didn't. A familiar 2-horse-and-a-wheel International Brotherhood of Teamsters logo on the front door of a local. Frank sits with the young Teamsters lawyer, Bill Buffalino, whose daughter's wedding Frank will drive across 3 states to attend 25 years later. Ever show up late? No. Any moving violations? No. You drink on the job? No. You ever hit anyone? Yeah. On the job? No. All this seems to be satisfactory to the lawyer. Frank, I don't care if you did it or not. It makes no difference to me. I'm here to defend you. But did you? Frank isn't sure if he's supposed to admit it or not. Eventually, I work hard for them, when I'm not stealing from them. Bill smiles. He likes Frank. He won't be the last to appreciate his honest dishonesty. Well, they have to prove it first. If they can, what they're going to want is names. Would you give them names to keep your job? Skinny Razor is among the spectators in the courtroom. The same Teamster attorney stands before the judge. Your Honor, if this were about right and wrong, the company would have sought Mr. Sheeran's dismissal. They didn't. What they sought and offered him is money, exchange for the names of conspirators he wouldn't give them. He couldn't give them because they don't exist. They don't exist because he never stole anything. He never stole anything because he's an exemplary employee who has never taken a day off sick leave. The only rule he ever broke was his own unions by helping others carry sides of beef from his truck to their refrigerators in the dead of winter. As Frank walks in, Skinny and the other guys give him a hero's welcome he didn't get when he returned from the war. The judge threw the case out. He said if he owned stock in that company, he'd sell it. Skinny and the mob guys toast Frank. The more important thing was I ratted out nobody. Not even my lazy yard manager. This meant everything to Skinny and his friends. Skinny introduces Frank to Angelo Bruno, a higher mob guy. That was a good thing you did, Frank. Everyone's proud of you. Sit down with me. Frank sits, as Bruno pours him a glass of wine. Angelo Bruno was Skinny's boss, and the boss of all of Philadelphia, and a silent partner in just about everything downtown, including Villa de Roma, a restaurant on 9th Street downtown, which is where I was properly introduced to his boss, the older guy who helped me with my carburetor that day on Highway 476, Russell Bufalino. Russell naps in the passenger seat while Frank drives. Can we stop, Frank? An hour's up. Frank pulls the car over. The women get out to smoke. The car door shutting wakes Russell up. "Where are we?" "Outside Wilkes Bar." "I got some things I gotta do in Wilkes Bar. Wake me when we get there." Russell closes his eyes again to nap. I had no idea how big Russell was when I met him. His territory included Pennsylvania, upstate New York, parts of New York City, northern New Jersey and Ohio, interests in Florida, Canada, and Havana before Castro threw him out. Frank regards his wife and Carrie, smoking outside the car, framed by the windshield. Not only that, his wife Carolina was related to the Chandras of the Cosa Nostra, which meant her family went back to the earliest days of the mob, which was like when she came over on the Mayflower. Russell, 20-some years younger, sits at a table with one of Frank's steaks on his plate. Anything that concerned anything, you had to go to Russell, and you had to go there because he would never come to you. You either went to Villa de Roma, or Vesuvius, or his curtain shop in Pittston. A succession of guys sits down with Russell in the back of his shop amidst bolts of fabric. You wanted to bribe a judge, you asked Russell. You weren't sure how much to give him, Russell would tell you. You wanted to up one of your guys, he'd tell you if you should. You wanted to get rid of someone, you needed Russell's permission. Russell takes a bite of steak. "I knew you were okay that day on the highway. I could tell." The angle shifts to show Frank sitting at his table. "You did the right thing, my Irish friend. Those guys have wives and kids, and you saved them from jail." Russell pulls back the folds of a napkin in a bread basket with the care of a man inspecting a bird's nest. "Taste this bread. The only place you get it this good is Philly. Whenever I'm here, I take some home with me. It's the prosciutto baked into it." Frank takes a small bite. Russell waits for his reaction. Bueno, grazie. E bueno dice, dove fa un pari impari italiano? L'Italia, nella guerra. Russell is pleased and impressed with Frank's Italian and the fact that he was in the war. Regarding the prosciutto bread, "Allora, guardillo, here's the secret. This is what you do." He takes a piece and dips it in his wine. When you go to confession, which I used to do more than I do now, you know which priest's line to get on. You want the fairest one who won't give you a hard time. Russell was that priest. Frank follows Russell's example and dips his bread in the wine. But Frank, always remember, never eat alone. You might choke. Frank isn't sure he understands. Whatever it is, you let everyone in the chain make a decent profit. You buy a thing for 1,000, you don't sell it for 200. You sell it for 1,500, and you let the next guy sell it for 2. I understand. I know you do. Let's eat. They eat the wine-soaked bread. Frank rides in the passenger seat of the same car from the opening scene, traveling north to south on the highway, as it passes a motel. Back in 1975, traveling south to north, Frank pulls the Cadillac off the highway, where the same motel sits. Frank and Russell check in while their wives smoke outside. I quit my job, but kept my union card and started doing a little business for Skinny and his friends who all worked for Angelo, which meant they all worked for Russell. Frank sits in an idling car, the tailpipe breathing steam into the chilly air. Business, as I said before, whether you were Skinny, Angelo, Russell, or anyone else downtown, always meant collecting money. Skinny hurries down the steps of his house in a robe and slippers, small paper bag in his hand. That's what they did. They collected money. Skinny hands the bag to Frank in the car. "Don't use it. Just show it to him." Frank sets the bag on the seat. Skinny scampers back up the steps of his house. Frank drives off. Frank sits in his car watching a street corner. Sees a guy coming around it. Takes a gun out of the bag, gets out of the car, and intercepts the guy on the sidewalk. In those days, you took a gun with you to show a guy. These days, they shoot you with it. The guy is terrified by the mere sight of the gun and goes with Frank back to the car without argument. Frank notices that the guy has peed his pants. He rolls down a window. In those days, you wanted your money tomorrow. These days, they want it yesterday. Skinny regards the guy standing before him in wet pants. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I swear. Here, tomorrow. Skinny nods. Okay, go. But the guy doesn't go. What? How am I going to get home? Take a fucking bus. Get out of here. The deadbeat leaves. He peed in my car. I always make sure they pee before they get in the car. I should have told you that. Frank, his wife Mary, and their 2 daughters eat dinner with Russell and Carrie Buffalino. The more I got to know, the more I knew Russell didn't come to Philly only for the prosciutto bread. Russell tries to show Frank's daughter Peggy how to eat prosciutto bread dipped in wine. He and Angelo were involved in every type of crime known to man: loan sharking, gambling, hijacking, prostitution, drugs, and murder. And Peggy somehow senses this. Russell makes her uncomfortable. She shakes her head no. She doesn't want any bread dipped in wine. Everyone, including the FBI, knew this, but there wasn't much they could do about it unless someone talked, and if someone talked, they didn't talk much. Flash cut to a parked car's interior, lighting up with gunfire. Frank comes in to find Mary cooking and his daughter Peggy sulking. What's the matter with her? The grocer slapped her for eating a grape. It's no big deal to Mary, but it is apparently to Frank. Which? On the corner? It's nothing. She shouldn't have done it. Frank to Peggy. Come with me. Frank leads Peggy to the corner store. Stay here. He leaves her on the sidewalk, disappears inside, comes out pushing a guy in an apron. This is him? Peggy nods. The grocer tries to look tough. I know judo. Frank throws the guy to the ground, puts his hand on the curb and stomps on it, crushing it. Let's go. It's dinner time. Peggy is too stunned to move. He stares at the man writhing on the ground. The family eats in silence. Peggy steals glances at her father, afraid of him now. No one in Philadelphia ever touched any of my daughters again. Grocers, teachers, boyfriends, anybody. At least they never told me about it. Frank's 3rd daughter is being baptized. The others are there, along with lower-level guys like Skinny. I still wasn't making a lot of money, but I was doing all right. Then one day, Whispers de Tullio came over to my table at the bocce club and asked me if I could use 10 grand. A short, furtive man in his 30s sits with Frank, and, true to his name, whispers too quietly for us to hear. This is not the same Whispers that blew up the car around the same time. Flash cut to a car blowing up, and then back to the bocce. This is the other Whispers, the one you always saw hanging around wanting to be bigger than he was. We have to come in closer in order to hear what Whispers is whispering. I pushed a lot of money to this place, more than I should, more than I pushed anybody, and now I'm lucky to get the vig. He was talking about a linen supply place, a big industrial laundry service, but with a lot of idle machines. They supplied fresh linen to restaurants and hotels, pick it up, wash it, iron it, deliver it. Normally, this is a license to print money. Except this other laundry place down in Delaware is siphoning a lot of their business. This place looks a lot like the other place, only busier. I'm a little concerned that my place, because of this other place, is going to go out of business and never be able to pay me. Whenever anyone says they're a little concerned, they are very concerned. And when they say they're more than a little concerned, they're desperate. I'm more than a little concerned. As workers haul laundry out of a Cadillac linen service truck, I knew he didn't want me to go down there and show a gun. You don't pay 10 grand for that. Whispers passes an envelope across the table. I want you to bomb or torch or burn this place to the ground. Put these fucking guys out of business. Who? The Cadillac Linen Service. The competition. Are you listening? You need to speak up a little. I want them gone, closed down, burned to the ground. They can go collect their insurance. Which, Being Jews, you know they will, and leave the other place the fuck alone. Frank takes a quick look in the envelope. This isn't 10 grand. It's 2 grand. You get the rest if there's nothing left of this place. Nothing. I don't want them starting back in a couple weeks, then nothing's changed and I'm out 10 grand besides. Am I sure you're good for it? I'm good for it. If I'm not, you'll do something terrible to me, and I don't want that. I just want these Jew fucking washermen burnt to the ground. Frank studies him, then puts the money in his pocket. One thing. We don't mention this to anybody, including Skinny. We see each other downtown, we just say hello, that's it, like usual. Frank takes $500 from the stack of bills and gives the rest to Mary at the kitchen table with their 3 girls. I hit on a $4 bet. She knows this isn't true, but she doesn't care. Peggy knows it isn't true, but does care. Frank drives slowly past the front of the Cadillac Linen Service building, then around the side, then around the back. He notes a burglar alarm box. He sits in his parked car having a look at the building at night, gets out and crosses past the truck, peers in one of the industrial windows at the washing and pressing machines inside. He fills a 5-gallon gas can with gasoline. He puts it in the trunk of his car, where there are 3 more gas cans and a box of dynamite. Frank is leaving his house at night. He puts a dark jacket on his dark clothes and heads for the door. As he comes out and walks towards the car, he sees Skinny standing next to his own and stops. Angelo wants to see you. Skinny leads Frank into the restaurant. The place was empty except for Angelo, Russell, and Phil, the bartender. Everything was amplified like on a landing craft headed for a beachhead. The squeak of the bartender's bar towel as he wipes the glass. The click as he sets it on the rack. His footsteps as he walks to the door. The snap as he locks it. Even the drip of wine falling back into Russell's glass as he dips his bread in it. Sit down, Frank. Frank sits, listens to the silence before, What are you doing in Delaware? Frank glances from Angelo Bruno, who's studying him, to Russell Bufalino, who isn't, and wisely decides to tell the truth. Blowing up a laundry service. Who for? This is not one of these times to not say. For Whispers. The other Whispers. The one who owns the Cadillac Linen Service? Some Jews in the laundry business. They own part of it. Someone else owns the other part. You know who? No. I do. Who? No, I do. I own the other part. Not, I know who owns the other part. I didn't know that. That's something I didn't know. Whispers didn't tell you it was a Jew mob? He said it was Jew washerwoman. Jew washerwoman. What else he say? I'll bet he said to keep it to yourself. Frank nods, listens to the amplified sounds, and then, I should have checked. I'm sorry for not checking. I'll give him his money back. He won't need it. You can keep it. You sure? He won't need it. Thank you. Thank Russell. I wouldn't have wasted my time. I'd have let the Jews have you. Thank you, Russell. Russell nods. You're welcome, and finally speaks. This Whispers, like the other Whispers, has aspirations. He put you in a spot. If you had done this, the only one the Jews would have known was you. They saw you driving around, they would have got you, and this Whispers would have kept whatever he owed you. I don't know for sure he would do that. If he didn't, he thought about it. That's enough. When in doubt, have no doubt. The 3 of them at the table freezes into a tableau, a poorly attended Last Supper. When someone has to go, no one ever says he has to go. They tell you to do it by not telling you not to, or at most they say, it is what it is. The tableau unfreezes. Buffalino shrugs. It's what it is. Whispers waits on the streets. Sees Frank come around the corner, walk towards him. A friend walking towards friend. They found him dead on the sidewalk, shot at close range with a .32 by an unknown assailant. Frank shoots him in the head and keeps walking. All I know about it. I could never find my .32 after that. Must have ended up someplace. Frank sits at the kitchen table reading a newspaper article. There is an accompanying Ouija-like photo of Whisper's body on the sidewalk. The next morning I sat there staring at the paper for an hour. I kept thinking, it could have been me. It would have been if it wasn't for Russell. No questions asked. I owed him my life. Frank and Russell drive along a street in Wilkes Barre. Here it is. Frank pulls to curb in front of the closed jewelry store. You want me to come in with you? Nah, I'm just picking something up. As Russell goes into the store and collects some money, Frank waits in the car. After that, everyone started treating me differently. Frank and Skinny sit at the bar together. Skinny wouldn't let me pay for drinks anymore. Frank and Angelo Bruno sit at a table together. Angelo wouldn't let me pay for dinner. Frank and Russell sit at a table together. Russell wouldn't let me pay for drinks after dinner. The angle shifts to show two Jewish mobsters at the table. Even the laundry service Jews who had wanted me dead were nice to me. A waitress sets down another round of drinks. Even the waitresses, flirting, you know. The waitress gives Frank a smile. All that separated who I was in their eyes yesterday and who I was today was one thing. That particular matter with Whispers on the sidewalk. This did not escape my notice. Frank walks down a rain-slicked downtown street with the Villa de Roma waitress. I had been drifting downtown for the last couple years. Now I was way down there. I was part of the culture. I was a fixture like the lights and the signs. They step on reflections of light and neon signs in the wet pavement. No time is a good time to leave your wife, but that's when I left mine. They disappear behind an apartment door on the corner. Frank sits at a table with a glass of wine, going over a scribbled list of names and numbers on a small notepad, crossing out some, underlining others. I started pushing money on my own, not just collecting for Skinny. You could call this a step up, but with any step up in business comes headaches too. The ladder of success is not lined in silk necessarily. He checks his watch, looks at the door, circles one of the names on his list. I had this one guy I made alone I couldn't find anywhere. Skinny tells me he's seen him at Harry the Hunchback's bar, the yesteryear, where I catch up with him. The guy whose name Frank just circled is crying as he sits with Frank, but not because he is scared. It turns out his mother died, and the funeral set him back the money he owes me. I felt bad for him. Frank comes in and Skinny looks up. You get your money? Not yet. Let me guess. His mother died? You heard? I heard 10 years ago. Frank parks and heads for the entrance. Frank strides over to the deadbeat's booth and drags him out of it. Beats him to a pulp until he's lying in his own blood on the floor. Harry the Hunchback comes out from behind the bar and stares at Frank. What are you doing? I got a problem with this guy. You got a problem? Take him outside. What am I supposed to do with all this blood? He owes me money. He owes you money. He owes you money. He owes me money. He's borrowing money from you and not paying me. Frank shrugs. Harry the Hunchback goes over to the guy on the floor and starts kicking him. 2 parked cars. Boxes of jewelry being transferred from the trunk of one car to the other. Another time, this guy gets a load of hijacked jewelry and never comes up with the money. When you do something like that, you know better. Frank sits at a table with a woman we recognize as a younger Irene. Angelo Bruno and his wife are with them. As the women talk to each other. Russell needs a favor. And as Bruno talks to Frank in confidence, Angelo wanted me to deliver a message. This is after he already delivered one telling the guy what it is, so I know we're past just showing a gun. A car pulls up behind Frank's parked car. Now, if you're going to actually use a gun, it should be a new one that's never been fired. You don't want to get blamed for something someone else did before you even had it. So, I recommend one out of the box. A guy climbs out and hands him a small paper bag through the window. Frank sets it on the seat beside him and pulls away. What kind? That depends. The cops call a .32 a woman's gun because it's easier to handle, has less kick than a .38. It also makes less noise than a .38, and a whole lot less noise than a .45. Clothes on a paper bag as Frank keeps the car under the speed limit. But sometimes you want a lot of noise, like in the middle of the day to scatter bystanders. Sometimes you don't want a lot of noise, like in the middle of the night. The jeweler wakes up with a noise in his house, a kind of low rumbling, and climbs out of bed to investigate, taking a gun from his nightstand with him. The point of this was, if a guy with Welsh out on a load of hijacked jewelry, there's no telling what he's capable of doing or he's capable of saying. He's a rat in the making. The jeweler follows the sound to a door off the kitchen, opens it and descends wooden steps to the basement where a washing machine is running. In orderly society, there are certain rules that you follow, and that's what it is. The jeweler regards the washing machine, which is the last thing he ever regards, as a .32 behind his head pops. Frank and Russell are checking out of Wilkes-Barre Motel. I got it. No, I got it. Frank, please. I got it. Russell and Carrie never had children. Russell and his wife Carrie, along with Frank and his second wife Irene, and his still-growing family, 4 daughters, now bowl. He adopted me, so to speak. Russell helps one of Frank's girls with a heavy ball. Peggy, still unsure of him, keeps her distance. Peggy's afraid of me. Frank and Russell drink beers and watch the women and children bowl. She's afraid of me. She is? She's a sensitive girl. Russell nods, smiles at Peggy, but she looks away. You happy with what you're doing, Frank? It's all right. I'd like it more if it was more steady. Do you like driving a truck? Not so much, but I like being outdoors. I like being part of something. The union. Yeah. What about union organizing? I looked into that. There's a long line. I imagine so. But things can change like the weather. You know what they say about the weather. He tells him in Sicilian. What's that mean? The weather's in God's hands. A thunderstorm throws rain on Frank as he hurries from the car to the Villa de Roma. Summoned by Russell, Frank finds him at his usual table with a telephone receiver to his ear. I'm sorry, I'll wait over. Sit. Frank sits. Into the phone. That friend I told you about is here. Can I put him on? He holds out the friend to Frank. Who is it? A friend of mine. Frank takes the phone. Hello? Frank. Yes? It's Jimmy Hoffa. The image of Frank and Russell at the table freezes. Nowadays, young people don't know who Jimmy Hoffa was. Maybe they know he disappeared, that's it, but back then there wasn't an American alive who didn't know who he was. Elvis Presley on the Milton Berle Show, Hound Dog. From 1955 to 1965, he was as famous as Elvis. The Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, but we keep hearing Elvis. From 1965 to 75, he was as famous as the Beatles. The Elvis song continues over Hoffa orating before a crowd of workers. If you got it, a truck brought it to you. Food, clothing, medicine, fuel for homes and industry. The day our trucks stop, America stops. As the image of Frank on the phone and Russell at the table unfreezes. I hear you're a brother. Yes, sir. Local 107. Since 1947. Our friend speaks very highly of you. He's not an easy man to please, especially when you're Irish like us. Jimmy was to labor what Russell Bufalino was to me, a man among men. Hoffa at a Teamster rally. Hoffa moves among his Teamster brothers, campaigning for Union presidency. Both believed the end justified the means. Who doesn't? Maybe Bobby Kennedy and 2 or 3 other people? At least that's what they say. Frank's still on the phone with Hoffa. Management is working with the government to sow dissent in our ranks, and what we need is unity. We need solidarity more than ever before in our history. Do you want to be part of history, Frank? Yes, I do. Can you be in Chicago tomorrow? Cars pull into a parking lot behind a building. Go to Chicago. Speak to Joey Glimko at Local 777. He'll be working in public relations. Frank and Joey Glimko climb out of one of the cars. Joey Glimko, who was not known for his physical stature, he was almost as short as Jimmy. He ran Local 777 in Chicago. Frank and Joey Glimko and several other men enter the back door of a building. You'd never know how much he liked to eat because of his size, but he liked to eat. The men come through the tiled bathhouse and head for the locker room. But you'd never be sure who might be listening at meetings at restaurants or even at Local itself. When it was a meeting Joey would organize, it would need to be a place that was safe. The men come past long folding tables where food is being laid out. They'd close the place to the public and bring in the food and wine and put it on long tables. The men are now in white robes, eating. We'd sit in Turkish bathrobes, eat and drink, and discuss union business. We'd get a massage, and then eat again. Take a steam bath, sweat out all the food and alcohol, take a shower, and start eating again. The men looked like ghosts in the steam-filled room. The problem that summer wasn't management. It was Paul Hall's Seafarers Union, which was with the AFL-CIO, which was trying to organize the same non-union cab drivers we were trying to organize. This is what we had to deal with. This is what we discussed. How to encourage these drivers to join us rather than Paul's union. Frank stares up at the underside of a dashboard of a car he's hot wiring. If a rebel cabbie left his cab at a stand and went in for a cup of coffee, he came out to find his cab gone. Several pairs of headlights move along a road leading to Lake Michigan. All of them belong to cabs. Frank is driving one of them. After that, he'd never see it again. Frank and the other cab drivers, Local 777 guys, pushing the cabs into the lake while cops stand around watching. Jimmy had Mayor Daley's cooperation on this. The cops wouldn't help us push, but they made sure no one stopped us. One of the men is going from cop to cop handing over envelopes as the others push the cabs into the water. We dumped a lot of cabs in Lake Michigan, which proved to be a lot of work, especially for Joey, who, as I said, was not a big man. The work of dumping the cars in the lake exhausts Joey. I told him maybe it would be easier if we used candy instead. The trunk of a car opens, revealing boxes of dynamite. Joey and Frank carry the boxes to a back door of a cab garage, held open by another man. The place is silent, full of taxi cabs. Suddenly they start exploding. And then, we'd report to Jimmy. In a grocery store, Joey Glimko taps watermelons to find a good one. One thing about Jimmy, never make him wait. You have a meeting with him, get there on time. Get there early. Seriously. Then pick one, let's go. Joey carefully cuts a hole in the watermelon. Frank checks his watch. The other thing about Jimmy, he didn't drink. I know, an Irishman who doesn't drink. But he didn't drink and didn't like people drinking around him. It was also common knowledge that he didn't like watermelon. Joey pours a quart of rum into the hole of the watermelon and then hides the bottle. They sip from bottles of ginger ale. Joey, Frank, and Jimmy Hoffa. But only 2 of them are eating watermelon. I never seen a man walk through a crowd like Frank does and never touch a single person. Everybody parts out of his way. It's like Moses. Joey nods to himself as he studies Frank. It's like they're alone in the room. Maybe you should stay in Chicago a while. Whatever you want. Jimmy seems pleased. Joey sucks on a slice of laced watermelon. To both of them. You two sure like watermelon. Frank and Jimmy sit alone in the back of a parked car. The driver smokes outside of it. Everyone has to be united in the same direction or there's no progress for the worker, Frank. Dissenters are like Nazi collaborators. You were in the war, you know what I mean. You know what happens when you get to point A to point B. Sometimes a little beer spills in the way. With that in mind, I'm wondering if you'd help me straighten out a couple matters. All you gotta do is show up. Everything else is taken care of. You can do it in a day. Will you do this for me?" He waits for Frank's answer to this thoroughly vague assignment. "Sure." A car pulls up in front of Frank's house. The driver takes his overnight bag from the trunk and carries it for him to his front door. "All in one day, I flew to Puerto Rico, took care of a matter there for him, flew to Detroit, took care of a matter there, another in Chicago, and came home." Frank's wife Irene and daughters and Jimmy and his wife Josephine play miniature golf. Jimmy dotes on Peggy, helps her with the club. Jimmy fell for my daughter Peggy right away, and she fell for him. Maybe because she thought he wasn't like Russell and me and my other associates. He was legitimate, or so she thought, and no one would get their fingers broken. "Smile!" Joe Hoffa snaps a picture of Jimmy and Peggy together. Peggy stands in front of a blackboard reading an essay from a piece of paper. "If you have it, a truck brought it to you. This is what Mr. Hoffa says, and it's true. He's the president of the Teamsters Union. He started its pension fund. Before that, the workers had nothing but Social Security when they retired, which you can't live on. The pension fund changed that." It must be career day. Frank's in a chair next to her as she goes on with her essay. "The pension fund changed everything. It was what everything was about, and Jimmy had complete authority over it. He decided who could borrow from it and who couldn't. Irene brings out a candlelit birthday cake for Peggy. Frank, Jimmy, and Joe are the only other adults there. It's basically the same as what I did with Skinny. Loan money for a fee to guys like that deadbeat at Harry the Hunchback's bar whose mother didn't actually die. Only Jimmy loaned money to the biggest guys in the mob. A series of shots. 6 particular bosses in their legitimate places of business, restaurants, dry cleaners, bars, social clubs, and cooking dinners in their homes. He loaned money to Santo Trafficante, to Mayor Lansky, to Carlos Marcello down in New Orleans, to Tony Salerno and Tony Provenzano in New Jersey, to my boss and friend Russell in Philadelphia. Russell in his legitimate place of business again, his curtain shop, discussing fabric with someone. And even when Russell wasn't borrowing, he was at the table, getting a taste of what was on it. A guy looks at a vacant building site. Let's just say a guy wants to build a hotel in Atlantic City. He goes to the Teamsters for a loan. The guy meets with another guy in a Teamsters office. The one behind the desk wears a pin with the Teamster logo on his lapel. He sees Alan Dorfman, who managed the fund for Jimmy, who's happy to make the loan but wants to make sure the fund gets paid back, so he tells the guy to meet with Russell, who he knows will make sure the guy pays back or else. The guy who wants the loan speaks to Russell in the curtain shop. Russell tells the guy he'll help him get the loan, for which he'll tack on a 10% fee, which he splits with Dorfman, who splits that with Jimmy. Money being put into safety deposit boxes. Just like everything else, no one eats alone and no one chokes. Back before all the goofy hotels went up, back when it still looked like a desert dotted with building cranes, the fund was the mob's own private bank, and with it they flourished. Teamsters' money built the casinos in Havana and Las Vegas and Atlantic City. A counting machine in a counting room in one of the casinos counts money. That pension fund was the golden goose that laid the golden eggs. Several women under hairdryers. Jimmy also invested part of the fund into his own ventures, which were always kept in his wife Josephine's name. We move across the woman in the hairdryers to Joe Hoffa. She owned, so to speak, a fleet of Cadillac carriers, some charter fishing boats, 22% of a Florida land development called Sun Valley, that sort of thing. A man in sunglasses sits at a sidewalk table sipping an espresso. The same man from the earlier scene who we saw shot as he was frying eggs and sausages. One of Jimmy's clients was Sam Momo Giancana, who was friends with the Kennedys from back when. Jack's father made his money alongside the Italians as a bootlegger during Prohibition. Some men walk across the lawns of a graveyard, jotting down the names on the tombstones. Momo helped Joe Kennedy get his womanizing son elected president by making sure he won in Illinois. One of the men from the graveyard signs one of the names from the tombstones on the voting register. In exchange, Jack was going to get Castro out of Cuba so Momo and his friends could get back their casinos in Havana. Jimmy Hoffa watches Kennedy's inauguration on TV, but Jimmy didn't trust Jack and Bobby for one reason. They were millionaire kids. If there's one person you can't trust, it's millionaire kids. It didn't matter they were Irish, it didn't matter they were Catholic. Jimmy didn't like them, especially Bobby, who on top of being a millionaire kid, was mental. A shot of Robert Kennedy as his brother is sworn in. The Teamsters were the only union to back Nixon. The McClellan Committee senators are arriving. So what is the first thing Jack Kennedy does when he wins? He puts his crazy brother in charge of the Justice Department. Jimmy Hoffa is already there, on time like always, looking irritated that he's being made to wait, sitting with his union attorneys, including Bill Buffalino. Bobby Kennedy arrives and takes the center seat. Jimmy covers the microphone and turns to Bill. He's 15 minutes late. And what is the first thing he does? He goes after not just Jimmy, which in a way you could understand, but Giancana and all the other guys who put his brother in the White House. Hoffa raises his right hand and is sworn in. I don't know where you learn something like that. I guess in Massachusetts, which is a place I've never liked, except for the clam chowder, which isn't bad. Bobby Kennedy regards Hoffa like he's an insect. Are you saying you don't remember doing any favors for Johnny Dio, or you don't remember the conversation? I'm saying that to the best of my recollection, I must recall in my memory, I cannot remember. Where did this $20,000 come from? From individuals. Which individuals? Offhand, that particular amount of money I borrowed, I don't know at this particular moment, but the record of my loans, which I requested, I have. And out of all the monies I loaned over this period of time, I went into these ventures. Everyone looks at each other to see if that made any sense to them. The two of them were like that. The story about the guy who chases the whale. Only with Bobby and Jimmy. They were both chasing it. And at the same time, they were both the thing being chased. Nightclub, Kingston, 1975. The place is closed. Empty except for Frank at the bar with a beer, and the owner and Russell, who Frank can see behind a doorway to the back room. The owner gives Russell an envelope. When you're starting out, you always arrive for a meeting with someone like Russell with an envelope. Christmas lights glow on a tree in the Buffalino's house. Sinatra sings from a hi-fi. Wearing an apron, Russell slices meat off a leg of prosciutto and stirs it into a simmering pot of sauce. It wasn't payment for anything. No one was paid for anything. It was how you showed your respect. Is there anything you don't put prosciutto in? No? Russell and Carrie and Frank and Irene and the girls eat Christmas dinner together. But Russell wouldn't accept envelopes from me anymore. Now they sit around the Christmas tree opening gifts. Instead, he gave them to me, in the form of jewelry for my wife and gifts for my girls. Peggy, as always, is uncomfortable in Russell's presence. Frank and Russell retire to the den to drink some limoncello and talk in private. By this time, with the Kennedys running things, everyone was sure everyone's phone was bugged. You couldn't say anyone's name on the phone anymore. Everybody was that friend or your friend or our friend, whether they were your friends or not. When you talked about Bobby Kennedy, he was our friend. You could barely talk on the phone anymore. Frank has his kitchen phone to his ear. We need to talk about our friend. That's done, I took care of it. I'm talking about our other friend. The one we talked about. No, the other one. Frank doesn't know what he's talking about. We should talk in person. I'll meet you at the place. The place last time. No, the other place. It was impossible. You may as well throw the phone away. Where Frank and Russell can speak English. Jack supposedly is doing something about Cuba. The old man supposedly has a word with him. Finally, he's given us an envelope, supposedly. Frank drives himself to a South Philly trucking company, climbs out of his car, and speaks to a guy. You need to go see Phil at Milestone Hauling. He'll have a rig for you. Frank behind the wheel of a Milestone semi. Drive it down to Baltimore to a concrete plant on Eastern Avenue. It's the only one there. Frank pulls the rig onto the grounds of the plant. There's a little landing strip next to it. A guy will meet you there. A ferry named Ferry. Dave Ferry climbs out of a small plane on a landing strip and directs Frank to back his rig up to where some army trucks are parked. You'll pick up some things, and he'll load you some paperwork for the load in case you get stopped. Frank watches some Maryland National Guardsmen transfer weapons and ammunition from their truck to his. Frank drives the rig down Route 13. Drive the truck down to Florida, that's where you'll leave it. At a dog track outside Jacksonville. Frank pulls the truck onto the parking lot of a deserted dog track. A guy with big ears will meet you there and give you a car to get you back to Philly. As the guy gives Frank the keys to the car, Frank regards his ears. They don't look so big. What are you looking at? You looking at my ears? No. I had an operation, so there's no need to look at my ears anymore. Big Ears walks away. Frank climbs into the car and watches as a bunch of Cubans begin unloading the weapons and ammo from the truck. Russell and Giancana and Lansky and the rest figured that Castro was a lot like them. He was a boss, he had a crew, he had territory. Frank drives the car back up north. But he had come onto their territory and taken their property, and no one is supposed to get away with that. Frank, Irene, Peggy, and the other daughter, Dolores, watch a report on TV about the just-failed Bay of Pigs invasion. Everyone knows what happened after that. Jack Kennedy fucked it up. He was supposed to provide air cover at the last minute, but didn't, and the poor saps who weren't killed outright on the beach were rounded up, and who knows what happened to them after that. Castro makes an anti-American speech on the TV. Everyone else did what they were supposed to do, even that Ferry. But those millionaire Kennedys could fuck up a one-car funeral, and did. Everybody downtown started thinking the same thing, that maybe Jimmy was right about them. The sun-bleached coastline of Miami Beach in 1961. Everyone in short sleeves and sunglasses. But Cuba or no Cuba, there was still a union to run. Frank climbs out of a cab. A bellman helps him with his luggage. Everyone else arriving looks just as much as a gangster as he does. Jimmy appointed me sergeant-at-arms at the 1961 International Convention. It was the first one I ever attended. Frank stands next to check-in tables outside a ballroom, scrutinizing the faces of those showing their union cards to clerks for admittance. One of the matters approved was an increase to the expense account. For someone like me who traveled a lot with union business, I appreciated that. While Jimmy addresses the convention delegates, Frank surveys them, looks at their hands for cameras or guns. The other big thing was filling the international vice president position vacated by Owen Brennan, who died about a month before of a heart attack. Jimmy chose Frank Fitzsimmons. Fitzsimmons gets a handshake from Jimmy as he joins him at the podium. Jimmy used to always say, "I may have faults, but being wrong isn't one of them." But with Fitz, well, we know how that went. Jimmy pours Frank a glass of ginger ale. One thing that wasn't discussed on the convention floor was on Jimmy's mind. It was Philly. "I'm a little concerned about Philly. I'm a little concerned about Joe McGreal." Joe McGreal walks into a trucking company office where the owner has an envelope waiting for him. Joe McGreal was part of a rebel faction of Local 107. He was also a shakedown artist. "Guys like that give the union a bad name." "I'll take care of it." "No, I don't want that. I want you to run for president of the local. If you run, I guarantee that you'll win. you'll take care of the McGreal matter. Frank is stunned by Jimmy's belief in him, if that's what it is. You're like family to me, Frank, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm not giving you anything you didn't earn. I don't know what to say. Say you'll do it. That's all you'll have to say. I'll do it. Then it's done. You want some watermelon? What? Jimmy smiles, but leaves it at that. Frank parks his Cadillac near the loading dock of the same trucking company McGreal shook down and climbs out. Jimmy was right about his guarantee. I won the election. Maybe I won on my own. I'll never know. Frank comes into the same office where McGreal picked up the envelope. But I'm proud to say McGreal never shook down another employer in Philadelphia. Or if he did, I never heard about it. The trucking company owner takes an envelope from his desk, gives it to Frank, but Frank shakes his head no. I just wanted to come over and introduce myself, Frank Sheeran, president of Local 107. The owner is stunned, figured there's something else afoot, but tentatively shakes Frank's hand. Frank in his own office now, behind a desk, working with some union guys on legitimate business. This was as happy as I'd ever been, or would ever be, and it might have gone on forever if it wasn't for that nut in Nashville. Courtroom. A recess. Jimmy conferring with his attorneys at the defense table. The prosecution lawyers at their table. Spectators milling around. Bobby Kennedy's Get Hoffa squad had Jimmy on trial in Tennessee for the car carrier company in his wife's name. She was also part owner of that Florida land development company bought with union funds I mentioned, but that trial was in Chicago. And the nut was in Nashville, not Chicago. A young man in a raincoat emerges from the milling crowds and walks down the aisle towards the defense table. Some people say you always run from a guy with a knife and towards a guy with a gun. I don't know that I agree with that. The nut pulls out a gun and points it at Jimmy, who rushes the guy, grabbing his arm. The gun goes off and everyone scrambles for cover. But Jimmy has hold of the nut's arm and wrestles him to the floor and beats on him with his gun until the marshals get there and take over. Jimmy asked me to come down to be with him after that. I would have done it without being asked, but he asked. Frank, Jimmy's bodyguard now, walks alongside Jimmy towards the courtroom. During the day, I watched out for nuts in the courthouse. The camera takes a trip around the suite to see who the occupants are, beginning with another bodyguard sitting in a chair in the open doorway. At night, Ed Parton watched out for them and I watched television. Frank sits watching the unfolding events of the Cuban Missile Crisis on the TV. Jacket off, gun on the coffee table. While Jimmy strategized with his attorneys in his suite at the Andrew Jackson Hotel, which, apart from being a very nice hotel, had excellent fried chicken. We regard each of the attorneys as they eat fried chicken. Frank Regato was Santo Traficante's lawyer, loaned to Jimmy as a favor. Bill Buffalino, no relation to Russell as I mentioned, was the union lawyer out of Detroit. Tommy Osborne was very young and very smart. Jimmy, the only one not eating chicken, paces. Jimmy had reason to be a little concerned. People were actually going to jail because of the millionaire's son. Johnny Rosselli for one, Carlos Marcello for another. Even Russell was being investigated. Back to Frank watching the TV. The Cuban Missile Crisis is going on. The world could end any day, and what is the government doing? Going after Jimmy. Deserted stretch of highway. A lone Lincoln town car parked on the shoulder. And what is he doing? A Tennessee State Highway Patrol car pulls over and parks. But rather than what normally happens, a man gets out of the town car, walks at the police car, and hands the trooper an envelope, returns to his own car, and drives off. Jimmy and his lawyers arrange surveillance photos of jurors on a coffee table. To one on which someone has already written, Patrolman's Wife, Jimmy adds a checkmark flourish. Frank is in the same chair as before, again watching television. Ed Parton is in the same chair as before in the doorway, again watching for nuts. And what is Ed Parton doing? Ed Parton removes tape that holds a small tape recorder to his ribs and places it on the coffee table in Federal Prosecutor Walter Sheridan's office. And what happens? The man who rendezvoused with the trooper out on the highway is called to the stand. As he raises his right hand to be sworn in, Jimmy at the defense table raises his own and spreads his fingers. The man nods. The teamster who made the $10K payoff to the juror's patrolman husband took the fifth. The teamster witness leans into the microphone. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer that question under the protection afforded me by the Constitution. All I ask is, are you a member of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters? On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer, but it didn't matter. They had Ed Parton's tape, and Jimmy now had jury tampering to add to his list of woes. Frank comes into the lobby from the street and is surprised to find it empty. Not even the security guard is there. The only bright spot for Jimmy during all of this is what happened that November. He comes down a hall and finds everyone standing around a television set. To them, what is it? No one says anything. Some are weeping. He looks at the TV and surmises what we already know. John Kennedy has been shot in Dallas. All the flags are at half-staff except the one outside the Teamster headquarters in D.C. As Jimmy emerges from the building, a new crew intercepts him. Mr. Hoffa, will you be attending the service? I wasn't invited. You don't have to be invited. 1 million Americans will be there. In that case, I need to check my schedule. Jimmy continues towards his waiting car, trailed by the news crew. If you were to go and were asked to speak, what would you say? I'd say Bobby Kennedy is just another lawyer now. The slain president's solemn funeral procession Jimmy isn't part of. A camera focuses on Robert Kennedy. Bobby didn't know who was behind the matter in Dallas any more than anyone else did, but he knew he was to blame. He knew how things worked. Mob bosses are among the mourners paying their respects or trying to appear so. Russell, Tony Salerno, Columbo, Giancana. A boss has a problem with another boss, he doesn't fix it by kissing an underboss. To kill a dog, you cut off its head, not its tail. Russell sits with his wife at his usual table, dipping prosciutto bread in wine. The second that bullet took the top of Jack Kennedy's head off, the organized crime program just stopped. Jimmy regards the jury, which has just rendered its verdict. Frank watches from his usual spot in the back of the courtroom. It just came a little too late for Jimmy, whose trials were already underway. The judge motions to Jimmy to rise. Jimmy stands. Mr. Hoffa, most defendants that stand before this court for sentencing have either violated the property rights or personal rights of other individuals. You stand here convicted of having tampered with, really, the very soul of this nation. The Cadillac parked at the side of the highway. All the luggage is out of the trunk. As Frank and Russell change a flat tire, the wives seize the opportunity for a cigarette. A truck roars by, and a prison bus roars by on the same highway in the 1960s. He got 8 years for that. The black bus pulls past the gates of the penitentiary, and another 5 for the Sun Valley land development thing. Jimmy Hoffa, inmate number 33298NE, is fingerprinted and photographed and given a blue denim prison uniform. That's 13 years of school. But it could have been worse. It could have been someplace other than Lewisburg. Jimmy and several other Teamsters and mobsters eat spaghetti and meatballs and ice cream in the cafeteria. Lewisburg is where they put everyone from downtown. They pretty much ran the place. Lunchtime was like happy hour at the Friendly Lounge. Jimmy said they had the best ice cream he'd ever tasted, and he loved ice cream. Jimmy sits with his lawyers at the table. Opposite him is an empty chair. Question 41 in the Federal Correctional Institution brochure is, how can I take care of my business while in confinement? And the answer is, you must appoint someone else to run your business while you are confined. A visitor, Frank Fitzsimmons, comes in and sits down in an empty chair. Jimmy chose Frank Fitzsimmons. Fitz's main qualification was he was weak. Jimmy could control him. Fitz liked to drink and play golf, and that was about it. Fitzsimmons whacks a golf ball off a tee. The problem is, weakness is a weakness, and that leads to other problems. But in Lewisburg, Jimmy had other things to be concerned about. The little guy from Jersey, Tony Provenzano. Provenzano, who's even smaller than Jimmy, moves down the cafeteria line alongside much taller inmates. Tony Pro, before he went to school for a semester for extortion, ran things in New Jersey for Tony Salerno. He also ran a Teamster local in North Jersey. A car drives down a highway past farms. I never liked Pro. He'd kiss you for nothing. One time he had a guy kissed for getting more votes than him in a union election, and they were on the same ticket. The guy in the passenger seat fiddles with the radio. He couldn't stand someone being more popular than him, and he had Sally Bugs strangle the poor guy with a nylon rope and bury him on a farm. As the guy settles on a station and sits back in his seat, Sally Bugs in the back seat loops a rope around his neck and strangles him. Pro sits at Jimmy's table with a tray of food. Jimmy's done with this, except for his ice cream, which he savors. I gotta talk to you about a problem I got with my pension. I know, what do you know? I know you're having problems with that. Will you look into it for me? There's nothing to look into, it is what it is. What is it? You lost, you forfeited when you came here. Yours is forfeited too? No. Pro can't imagine why his is gone and Jimmy's isn't, but Jimmy doesn't elaborate. He just eats his ice cream. Eventually, your pension is still there. Uh-huh. We're both sitting here. We're both sitting here for different things. You're sitting here for extortion. I'm sitting here for fraud. So that's the difference. I don't see the difference. I didn't threaten anybody and you did. So what? That makes no sense. It does if you think about it. It doesn't, and I don't want to debate. Just do something about it. There's nothing I can do. There's always something you can do. It's federal law. I don't care. You can still do something about it. I can't. What can I do? You can get me my fucking money. How? Some other way. What way? The same way you got your money. I earned my money. You're here for fraud. You stole the money. I stole money, okay? In a different way. Fine. Still, I want what I'm owed. You people. What? What? What did you say? I can't help you. You people, you said. What does that mean, you people? I'm tired of talking about this. You people? Jimmy ignores him. Eats his ice cream like Pro's not there. Suddenly, Pro lunges across the table and grabs him. They tumble to the floor and fight until the guards get there to break it up. Shoe store, Ohio, 1975. Irene and Carrie try on dress shoes. Russell collects an envelope from the store owner. Frank regards a row of men's shoes, including a tasseled pair with spikes. Fitzsimmons, as he is so often, is back on the golf course lining up a putt. So Jimmy had the Pro problem. He had the Fitz problem. The Fitz problem was everyone downtown liked him. He'd make pension fund loans to people Jimmy never would, and after the Dorfman thing, he even lowered the interest. A car door opens automatically. The man behind the Lincoln Continental backs out. Alan Dorfman, you remember? He ran the fund. He was an ex-Marine, had worked with Jimmy a long time. He was one tough Jew. The windows of the Lincoln suddenly explode from shotgun blasts. Holes erupt in the body of the car. His car was hit, 50 times. The car, not him. It's the point I'm trying to make. Dorfman yanks the glove compartment open to get his gun as the shotgun blasts keep pocking the car. That's not how you kiss somebody. That's how you send a message. But the message wasn't for him. 'Cause like I said, he wasn't afraid of anybody. As the dust settles, Dorfman can't quite believe he's not dead. The Lincoln is destroyed. Dorfman is fine. Fitz regards the car nervously. The message was for Fitz, who everyone knew had no balls. After that, anybody who wanted anything from the pension fund got it. TV image shows Robert Kennedy making an announcement. When Bobby announced he was running for president, he had to step down as Attorney General. Lyndon Johnson replaced him with Ramsey Clark. A celebration is going on at the bar. Frank is there. Russell, Angelo, Skinny, and the rest of the regulars. Everybody approved the Ramsey Clark. He didn't bother anybody. He even disapproved the wiretaps, if you can imagine. He called him Pamsy Clark. Everyone lifts their glasses. To Pamsy! Jimmy paces in his cell. Jimmy would have celebrated too, but now he was worried about Fitz, finally. Pro or no pro, Bobby or no Bobby. What that terrorist took care of for good in the kitchen of that hotel in Los Angeles 2 months later. Hotel kitchen. It's chaotic in there, not because of the assassination. This isn't the Ambassador. It's a hotel in Miami, and they're cooking for hundreds of people. Jimmy had reason to worry. Frank regards the ballroom while the hotel staff sets out glasses, dish, and silverware and centerpieces on the tables. There's a big picture of Fitz on the stage. The convention was coming up again, and this time there wasn't a single picture of him in the convention hall, just one out in the lobby in a corner. Frank has a couple of hotel maintenance guys rescue the poster of Jimmy in the lobby corner. It was like Fitz's people were trying to erase him like this was Russia. Now 2 posters flank the stage, one of Fitz and one smaller one of Jimmy, as Jimmy's wife speaks. As he looks forward to his next parole hearing, Jimmy sends you his good wishes, and God willing, we'll see you all at the next convention. While there is enthusiastic applause from the membership, Frank notes the rather fainter applause by Fitz. Frank sits alone with Russell at his usual table. How's everyone at home? Good. How's Carrie? Good. How's Jimmy? Not good. He wants to get out. That's understandable. They dip bread in wine. We need to talk about something other than Jimmy for a minute. I wonder if you could help me out in another matter. An Italian-American Civil Rights League rally. A few months before, Joey Gallo got that nut from Harlem to kiss Joe Colombo. A black man walks up to Colombo, shoots him in front of his wife and kids, and is shot by Colombo's bodyguards. No doubt he had someone's approval, but not like that. Not in front of the man's family. Crazy Joey climbs out of a car with his young wife and his bodyguard, smiling and waving to photographers before going into a nightclub. Now this fresh kid's running around New York with show business big shots getting himself in the papers all the time. Not only that, he's shaking down a couple of restaurants in Little Italy. Crazy Joey shares a table with other glamorous types. Running around like you're Errol Flynn? Okay. Kissing someone in front of his family? Not okay, but okay. Messing around with Little Italy? That's definitely out. A pile of guns on a coffee table in a motel room. For someone like this, you want 2 guns, the one you intend to use, and a backup. Frank regards the guns while the men who gathered them, red-haired John Francis, waits. You want something with a little bit more stopping power than a .22, a .32 or a .38. He moves the .22s and silencers aside. You certainly don't want a silencer. You want noise to send the witnesses running for cover. He adds the .45s to the other rejects, but not as much noise as a .45 makes, which you could hear in a patrol car blocks away. Little Italy on a normal spring day. Normally, nothing like this happens in Little Italy. It's bad for the tourist business if the tourists think it's unsafe, and people from downtown make a lot of money in the tourist business here. Downtown guys sitting outside a social club. Plus, tourists don't know how to be good witnesses. They don't have a sense like normal people to tell the cops it was 8 midgets who did it. Tourists taking pictures on a corner. Bet it would be late and the tourists from Idaho would be in bed by then. The fact it was Little Italy would relax Joey, and relaxed is what you want. We, a point of view, find and enter Umberto's Clam House. The point of view regards the interior. 2 entrances on Mulberry and Hester. The arrangement of tables, like it's making a diagram of the place. It was his birthday, so he'd probably be there with his wife and other relatives, which, in this case, was the point because of the Colombo thing. They should have to see what it's like. His bodyguard would be there too. A waiter comes past with plates of spaghetti with clam sauce. The place could be crowded, or not, late at night. The only good thing about late is he'd have a couple drinks in him and that would slow him down a little. The point of view finds an empty table for 4, reserved perhaps for someone special. There's no way you could get closer than 15 feet before someone reached for their piece Joey himself would be carrying, although it would probably be in his wife's purse. The bodyguards would be close at hand, so you'd want to deal with them first. Frank's daughter Peggy, late teens now, watches unnoticed through a crack in the bathroom door as her father slips a .32 and a .38 in the back of his waist and puts his jacket on. It's late. The house is dark. As he's leaving, Peggy appears at the top of the steps. "Where are you going?" "I have to go out. Go to bed." Frank gets into John Francis's car. Peggy watches from the window. Umberto's Clam House is the only place open this late. Crazy Joey's Lincoln pulls up front. He climbs out and helps the other passengers out, the first being his wife. "Umberto's is on the corner of Mulberry and Hester Street, so I'd get out on Mott Street and walk there, and John Francis would drive around the block a couple of times." John Francis pulls his car over. Frank gets out on the corner of Mott and Hester Street and the car pulls away. If I didn't come out, he'd leave. If I came out, it was done. But he wouldn't have seen anything, so he could never say anything, except he dropped me off on Mott Street, which is nothing. Frank walks towards Umberto's Clam House. Sometimes with something like this, you want to go to the bathroom first. It gives you a chance to make sure no one followed you in. It also gives you a chance to make sure there's nobody in the bathroom you have to worry about. It also gives you a chance to go to the bathroom. You don't want to be uncomfortable. Frank opens the Mulberry Street door of Umberto's. "But I went in before in a place this small. This late, you might as well just go right to work." Frank steps inside, walks towards the bar. Notes crazy Joey Gallo and his wife at a table with another couple, a bodyguard, and a little girl who must be his daughter. Before the bartender can ask Frank what he wants to drink, he walks towards Gallo's table and shoots the bodyguard with a .38. Gallo's wife and the other couple dive for cover, pulling the girl down with them. Gallo pushes away from the table to run. Frank shoots him once from behind just as he reaches the door, twice more on the sidewalk, and then walks up the block just as John Francis pulls around it. He gets in the car. Naturally, the next thing you want to do is get rid of the gun. John Francis liked the place in Yonkers. Frank throws the gun into the Hudson while John Francis waits in the car. There's a spot like this in Schuylkill River in Philly. If they ever sent divers in, they'd find an underwater armory. Frank washes his hands in the men's room. Turns out the Gallo thing was good for business. That's the irony. Right now, I guarantee you there's a tour bus parked outside Umberto's, 27 tourists gawking at the chair he was sitting in. And they gotta eat somewhere. He comes out past Russell on a payphone. Frank can't be sure, but it seems that Russell maybe stops talking to whoever he's talking to until Frank is out of earshot. He joins his wife and Carrie at a table. Jimmy sits before the parole board, reading from a prepared statement about how he will devote his life on the outside to education. Jimmy's parole board hearing didn't go so well. For one thing, they weren't any more pleased than Tony Pro about his $1.7 million pension. Jimmy is escorted down the cell block by guards. Luckily, all the money the Teamsters threw at Nixon's campaign over the years paid off. Frank and Jimmy's lawyers escort him past reporters and photographers as he's released. Up to his ears in Watergate, the president still found time to pardon him, and there was nothing the parole board could say about it. Frank waits at the pickup counter of a hot dog stand. A TV by the grill, like every TV in America, broadcasts the Watergate hearings. The first thing he did was go down to Miami for a well-deserved vacation. The first thing I did was pick up some chili dogs for us from Lum's, which he loves almost as much as ice cream. Frank watches as his order is assembled. The secret is they steam them in beer. There's not a better hot dog in America. The Watergate hearings are here on TV too, but Frank and Jimmy aren't watching as they eat their chili dogs. What am I going to do with Fitz? He actually thinks he runs things. I appointed him. Now he thinks he's somebody. He's very popular downtown. Of course he is. He loans money to anyone. If the banks did that, can you imagine? We'd have another financial crisis. I need another napkin. Frank hands him some. He's not going to step down. I have to get him out of there in an election, which I can do. I just can't believe I have to. Frank nods, but his silence says something. What? Well, like I said, he's popular downtown. Downtown don't run this union. With Fitz, they do. This cocksucker has fucked everything up. Him and that other cocksucker. That cocksucker is campaigning for him. Because of his pension. Because of his pension he doesn't deserve. He carries some weight, Pro. A lot of votes. I know. Jimmy wipes at his shirt with a napkin. Do I really have to make peace with this cocksucker? I hate the idea of that. Without him, Fitz would lose, there's no doubt. Jimmy tries to picture sitting down with Pro, and it's enough to ruin his otherwise nice lunch. If I sat down with him, would you come along? Of course. Jimmy glances away to the TV. John Dean is testifying, his wife sitting stoically behind him. That's a good-looking broad, that Modine. Frank and Jimmy sit at a table waiting. Jimmy checks his watch and looks at Frank. Fuck it. Let's go. Let's give him a few more minutes. This isn't right. You don't do this. You don't make a man wait. I know. The only time you do is when. When you want to say something. When you want to say fuck you. That's the only time. Frank nods. They wait. Finally the door opens and Tony Pro, wearing shorts and a polo shirt like he just came from the pool, comes in with another man. They join Jimmy and Frank at the table. I just heard it's 8 degrees back home. Can you believe that? It's what, 70 outside? Why don't we live here year-round? That's what I want to know. Jimmy doesn't say anything. Regards Pro's casual attire. Eventually, what? You're late. There was traffic. I've never been late for a meeting in my life. Pro to his cousin. Wasn't there traffic? The cousin nods. I've never waited for anyone that's more than 10 minutes late. I'd say 15. 15 is right. No, 10. I don't think so. 10 is not enough. You had to take traffic into account. That is taking traffic into account. That's why it's 10. I still say 15. 10. Fine, we disagree on that. I'm here. What can I do for you? Jimmy can barely think straight, as mad as he is about Pro being late, but eventually collects himself. I want to ask you for an endorsement for... Before you tell me, let's get the other thing straightened out. I can't do anything about your pension, not with Fitz in there. With Fitz there, you should talk to Fitz about it. I did. He said he'd take care of it, no questions asked. You wouldn't do that, but he will. I meant the other thing. The other thing? You know. I don't know. Your apology. My apology for what? For what you said when you were sitting there eating your fucking ice cream like some fucking king. That was an ethnic slur. You people. Jimmy just looks at him, and then, I apologize for that after you apologize for being late, you motherfucking wop cocksucker. Now Pro just looks at Jimmy while Frank shakes his head wearily. Eventually, I'll apologize for that after I kidnap your granddaughter, rip her guts out, and send them to you in an envelope. Jimmy goes for him. Frank and Pro's cousin try to pull them apart like the guards did in the prison cafeteria, but just like then, it isn't easy. Frank drives Jimmy back to his condo after the disaster with Pro. They drive in silence. Then, you think Russell would do something about the little guy? That would be too complicated. I know, but maybe you could talk to him, have a conversation, see what he says. I'd appreciate that. Frank and Russell climb out of Frank's car. There's no way what Jimmy wanted was going to happen. Russell, Pro, and Pro's boss, Tony Salerno, were all Genovese technically. They head for the entrance of Vesuvius Restaurant. But maybe things could be smoothed over without going that far. Maybe calmer heads could get together and prevail. Frank and Russell share a table with Tony Salerno. I don't approve of what Pro said to Jimmy. Now that Bobby Kennedy was long gone and Elliot Richardson was all tied up with Watergate, we could speak English again whenever we wanted. but I'm not going to tell him what he can say and what he can't say. Jimmy says things he shouldn't sometimes. He's very upset. I'm sure he is. Who talks like that about a man's grandchildren? But someone has to calm him down. I don't know what to tell him to calm him down. I don't know if it would calm him down, but you can tell him I always liked him and I won't stand in his way. Fitz plays golf with a diminutive Tony Pro. That didn't calm him down. But at least for a while, he dealt with Fitz instead of the little guy. Jimmy, always a magnet for reporters at the Teamsters offices, stands outside what used to be his building, giving a televised interview. This guy travels around the country to every goddamn golf tournament there is. He does this, collects a full-time salary as Teamster president. How do you do that? There's not enough hours in a day. I went to prison for fraud. This is fraud, what he's doing. A man and his family walk along a dock carrying fishing tackle and a cooler. Fitz responded to Jimmy's criticism by asking Jimmy's old friend and ally Dave Johnson to resign from Local 299 so Fitz's son Richard could take it over. We see Dave Johnson and his wife and kids near his 45-foot cabin cruiser, and it suddenly blows up. Detroit. A man comes out of a Nemo bar and walks towards his white Lincoln Continental. Jimmy responded by sending a message back that Fitz's son Richard should be happy with the things the way they were. Richard Fitzsimmons' Lincoln blows up. Joe Hoffa puts a file box in the trunk of her car and climbs in behind the wheel. Fitz responded by suggesting to Jimmy's wife Josephine she might be happier working somewhere else and fired her from her union job, which cost them $48,000 a year. Her hand shakes as she turns the key in the ignition, but the car doesn't blow up. Jimmy is the guest on Meet the Press. A makeup girl dabs moderator Lawrence Spivak's face, but when she tries to do the same for Jimmy, he waves her off. The thing with Joe that enraged Jimmy so much is he tried to discredit Fitz for good by playing the highest card in the deck, the organized crime card. Jimmy on camera now, in the middle of the program. Frank Fitzsimmons has sold this union out to his underworld pals. The mob controls them, which means it controls our pension fund. I'm talking about $1 billion in loans this guy has given to known racketeers for their illegal enterprises. This sort of thing got everyone's attention. Salerno, Russell, and Frank in the Vesuvius. Is he serious? He doesn't mean any of this. Maybe he got religion in prison. He didn't. People do. Remember Whispers? The other Whispers. He's just doing what the millionaire's son did to him because it worked. I don't know. When I hear a thundering herd of hooves, I think of horses, not zebras. Maybe he means what he says. I don't think he does. Either way, it's not good. Someone should tell him maybe he wants to cash in on that big pension and spend some more time with his grandchildren. I don't think he wants to do that. He should think about it is all. Frank walks along a street with Jimmy, who is walking his dog. Who said that? It doesn't matter, it was said. Was it Russell? No. That little cocksucker from Miami, Fiasco? No. Who? The other Tony. Which other Tony? They're all named Tony. What's the matter with Italians? They can only think of one name. Salerno. That Tony means something to Jimmy, but not enough, apparently, even after some reflection. I'm not retiring. Someone can tell him that. Someone means Frank. He's right in the middle of this now. Jimmy cleans up after his dog. How's everything at home? Good. That's good. How's everything in Philly? Good. That's good. Silence. What's wrong? Nothing. It's not the right time. What isn't? 107's putting together a testimonial dinner for me. I was thinking of asking if you might present the award. Who's going to be there? Everyone. Jimmy doesn't respond, wondering perhaps if he'd be safe with everyone there. I understand. No, I'll be there. I don't give a fuck who's there. You deserve this. I'd be honored. We come past a poster on an easel that says Frank Sheeran Appreciation Night, and make our way into a crowded ballroom. Everyone was there. Russell, Bruno, Tony Salerno, and Tony Pro and their wives at one table, and the other guys from downtown at others. Even the mayor was there, Frank Rizzo, and the head of the NAACP, Cecil Moore, the former DA, Emmett Fitzpatrick. They are on the dais with Frank and Jimmy. Just below it, at a table, Josephine Hoffa and Frank's wife Irene and his daughters. John McCullough of the Roofers Union put the tribute together, and we all went out. Waiters move around the tables, serving dinner to 2,000 people. Usually at these things you get chicken. If you're lucky, maybe a piece of meat. John arranged it so you could have prime rib or lobster. I had the prime rib. It was excellent. Skinny Razor stands at the head of a line where the bartender in a tuxedo makes him a drink. The bar was an open bar, not just beer and wine. You could get any drink you wanted and not pay for it. Russell and Salerno regard Jimmy eating prime rib up on the dais. Jimmy has always been good to deal with as far as I'm concerned, and the fact is there's only so much money they can loan. When that's dry, it doesn't matter who's in charge of it. I'm not concerned about new loans. He said to someone once Fitz is out, he's going to call in old loans. Real estate, casinos, whatever it is. You don't pay, he's taking them over. He said that? Who does he think he is, Castro? As dessert is served, a line of fishnet-stockinged dancers high kick on the stage. For entertainment, John had those gold-digger dancers with those legs that don't quit, and later that Italian singer Jerry Vale, who always seemed to be at these things. Russell has found a place where he can speak to Jimmy in confidence. I don't understand why you're doing this. You don't need the money. It's not about the money. Then I don't understand what all this talk is about. It's my union. I don't know, maybe it's about something else. Nothing from Jimmy. Some people, not me, are a little concerned. Some people, again, not me, feel you might be... Might be what? Demonstrating a failure to show appreciation. What, I'm not showing appreciation? Some people, again, not me, might think so. I went to school for 8 years. I didn't name one name. I know. I had to sit there listening to that whining cocksucker from New Jersey when all I wanted to do was eat my ice cream in peace. I know. I'm not showing appreciation? According to some people, not me. Fuck them. Jimmy walks away. Frank watches from across the room, concerned. One thing you don't do is say no to Russell. The other thing you don't do is walk away from him. You wait for him to walk away. You don't walk away first. Russell and Salerno watch Jimmy up at the podium, finishing his presentation to Frank. Frank has devoted his life to this union. As a shop steward, as an organizer, as a mediator, he's been tireless in his service to the working men and women of this state. He also holds a record you may not know, which I don't think anyone will ever beat. Most arrests on a picket line. 26 times in 24 hours. The guests applaud and laugh. I've known Frank a long time. I respect him. I rely on him. He's a union man to his bones, and he is my friend. I am honored to present this award and this beautiful watch to Frank Sheeran. Frank joins him at the podium as everyone applauds. Jimmy puts a gold diamond-encrusted watch on his wrist, pats him on the back, turns the microphone over to him. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you all. Thank you to my wife Irene and my lovely daughters for putting up with me all these years. I know I don't deserve all this tonight, but I have arthritis and I don't deserve that either. Everyone laughs. As Jerry Vale sings Sorrento, a photographer motions Frank and Jimmy to stand together for a picture. Look at all these people who came out. I truly had no idea you were this strong. It's a free steak in an open bar. No, they're here for you. The camera flashes. One more. I really do appreciate all the support you've given me. I mean it. It's not just words. I'm glad you're on my side. It's an honor. The camera flashes again. Now Jerry Vale is singing an Irish song as Frank and Irene and other couples dance. Russell and Salerno are talking at their tables. Salerno, who doesn't look happy, gets up and leaves. The song ends and Russell gestures to Frank he needs to talk to him. They find a private spot. I didn't want to do this in front of everybody. He hands Frank a small jewelry box. Inside, Frank finds a gold ring with an Italian coin on top. Only 3 people in the world have one of these, and only one of them is Irish. I have one, Angelo, and now you. I don't know what to say. Put it on. Let's see if it fits. Frank slips the ring on. It fits. Jerry Vale starts another song. There's one other thing. I'm sorry to do this on your special night, but it can't wait. It just got out of hand with our friend. You gotta talk to him for his sake. He is looking at Jimmy dancing with Joe. I don't know what else to tell him I haven't told him already. Tell him what it is. Frank isn't sure he heard right. Russell nods to emphasize what he shouldn't have to. Alone in the men's room, Frank and Jimmy wash their hands. I just spoke to Russell. He just spoke to Salerno. Yeah? He means what he's saying. So do I. He can't seem to get that through his head. Jimmy dries his hands on a towel, notices how ashen-faced Frank is. Don't look so concerned. I'm a little concerned. Nothing's going to happen to me. I've got more records and lists ready to be mailed to the press than that motherfucker can imagine. I know things he doesn't know. I know. He should be a little concerned, not you. He is. He told Russell to tell me to tell you what it is. Jimmy looks at Frank like Frank looked at Russell when he said it. He said that? Frank nods gravely. Someone else comes into the men's room. Jimmy drops the hand towel in the towel hamper and leaves. Frank stays behind to wash his hands again. Frank and Russell in front, the woman in back, as Frank drives along the highway through Ohio. The wedding was all well and good, but the real point of our trip to Detroit was a peace mission. An attendant checks the oil at a gas station. The women are buying cigarettes from a machine while Russell buys some candy. Frank making calls in a phone booth. I'm with the old man. We're driving up. He hopes this thing can be worked out. What did he say? He said let's work this thing out. Sit down after the wedding and work it out. I'm not going to the wedding. Too many people I don't like are going to be there. We could do it at your place if you want, at the lake. At the lake, huh? Or anywhere. From day one I wanted to work this out. I know. From day fucking one. I know. Just you two, right? Not the little guy. Of course the little guy, that's the point. No, just the 3 of us. The 3 of us defeats the purpose. I'm not sitting down with that cocksucker. It's time to sit down. Everybody says so. Not with him. You're making me work hard. Just us. Jimmy hangs up. Frank lets himself out of the booth. Russell comes up to him with a small paper bag. What did he say? He's thinking about it. That's all right. That's good. You want a Snickers? They're checking into another motel. Russell hangs up a phone, crosses a patio where Irene and Carrie wade in the pool with swimming caps on. Frank sits at a patio table and sips a Diet Coke. Maybe you should give Jimmy another call. See if he's thought about it. Frank speaks on a payphone near the pool. When are you getting in? Tomorrow morning. Good. I changed my mind about the other thing. You did? I'm meeting with the little guy tomorrow afternoon. With the little guy? Tony Jack set it up. With the little guy? Where? In public. Where do you think? The Red Fox on Telegraph. You know it? Tony Jack is Pro's cousin. They're all fucking cousins. What are you gonna do? But Jack's okay. I talked with him several times after the fiasco in Miami. I'd feel better if I was there. So would I. That's why I asked when you're getting in. What time is the meeting? 2:30, and he better not be late. The Red Fox, on Telegraph. I'll be there at 2. So you should be there at 2. I'll be there at 2. Frank hangs up, a little puzzled about Jimmy's change of heart. walks back to the patio table. What did he say? He's going to meet with Pro. That's good. Tony Jack arranged it. That's good. Frank and Irene change out of their driving clothes into something nicer for dinner, like people used to do. Maybe Jimmy was setting up Pro, or maybe he was counting on Pro to act like Pro so his cousin Tony Jack could see it. Or maybe this wedding really was bringing everyone together. There's a knock on the door. Russell and Carrie dressed nicely, too. As they all leave, whatever it was, you'd think Russell would have asked when the meeting was, whether he was supposed to come or not. Something. The door closes. We remain in an empty room. But he didn't. The two couples share the best table in a restaurant. We ate that night at a little Italian place Russell owned a piece of. A waiter delivers plates of food. I had spaghetti marinara and broccoli rabe, and afterwards, like you do in Italy, some salad with dressing Russell made himself in the back. Frank watches Russell prepare his special salad dressing in the restaurant's kitchen. You gotta start with good olive oil. If you don't have that, you don't bother. He pours about a cup of olive oil in a mason jar. Same with the balsamic. If it's not aged at least 10 years, forget it, you might as well eat wishbone. He pours some thick black balsamic vinegar in a jar. By the way, got a little change of plans. We're going to hang around here tomorrow morning and drive up in the afternoon. Frank doesn't say anything as Russell adds salt and pepper to the mason jar. Eventually, I told Jimmy we'd be there in the morning. I know. Russell holds something up that looks like his own gnarled hand. You know what this is? Ginger root. This is the secret to good dressing. Frank isn't thinking about salad dressing. He's still reeling from Russell telling him he's not going to let him be with Jimmy at his meeting with Pro, as Russell chops up some ginger and puts it in the jar. We did all we could for him, but he's made one too many threats. It's clear he intends to eat alone. It's what it is. Russell looks to Frank for a nod that he understands, but Frank doesn't nod. Russell swirls the mixture in the jar like a snifter of brandy and dips a finger to taste it. Frank? What? Don't call him. Frank lies awake in bed next to his sleeping wife. The phone rests on the nightstand next to him. Frank comes down to the breakfast room. Russell is the only other guest there this early, filling a plastic bowl with cornflakes. Morning. Good morning. How'd you sleep? Fine. You want some total? Okay. Russell pours him a bowl. We're going up to Port Clinton today. I thought we were staying here. The women are staying here. We won't be too long, 3 hours tops. They sit with their cornflakes. Russell eats his. Frank's lets his get soggy. What's in Port Clinton? A plane. A plane? To where? Detroit. This isn't making any sense to Frank. We're going to Detroit now? You're going to Detroit now, and then you're coming back. Then we'll take our time driving up. Nice leisurely drive. Frank has no idea what he's talking about, but doesn't like it, whatever it is. I gotta put you into the thing, Frank, otherwise you'd never let it happen, and it's gonna happen. Russell looks at Frank with the fondness of a father to a son. I gotta do this for your sake. Russell eats his cornflakes. Frank only stirs his. As Frank drives, Russell sits in the passenger seat looking out at scenery. I had to be in it. I knew too much already not to be. Either way, Jimmy would be gone. But this way, what could I ever say against anyone? Nothing. This way, and it was only out of respect for Russell the others had agreed, I'd be safe. They drive onto a grass airstrip on the edge of Lake Erie, where a small plane waits. Frank parks and gets out. Russell stays in the car. And so would Irene. All she and Carrie knew, and could ever say, is we took the caddy for a couple hours to run some errands while they ate lunch and smoked cigarettes at the Motel coffee shop, and then we were back. Frank climbs the steps of the plane and sits in one of the 6 seats. The pilot closes the door without looking at him and returns to the cockpit. As the plane begins to taxi, Frank looks out the window at the Cadillac. The plane descends over the northwest shores of Lake Erie, lands on the Pontiac airfield. The pilot lowers the steps and Frank climbs out and walks to a parked Ford that's empty. He gets in, finds keys under the mat, and starts it up. Frank drives along Telegraph Road, opens the glove compartment, notes the little .22 in it, closes it, sees the Red Fox restaurant up ahead, and checks his watch. I couldn't see him, but it was 2 o'clock, so he was there, and he'd be expecting me no later than 5 after. Jimmy knew Pro had no respect for punctuality, but he knew I did. Frank drives past the Red Fox and makes a left onto 7 Mile Road. Frank drives across a railroad bridge, then down a residential street with old modest houses on acre lots. Checks an address scribbled on a torn piece of newspaper, pulls over, and regards a house with brown shingles. Everything was close to everything else: the airstrip, the restaurant, the house, and where he'd go after that. Frank notes a Buick parked at the end of a single-lane driveway running alongside the house. Some people said it was in a 55-gallon drum that ended up in a New Jersey dump, or in the end zone of the Giants stadium under the grass. Frank opens the glove box and takes out the .22, gets out of the car, shoving the pistol in his back waistband under his jacket. These people never had a body on their hands. You don't want to have to drive 1 more mile than you have to if you can help it. He climbs the brick steps of the brown shingled house and opens the unlocked front door. A man on his hands and knees looks up at Frank through Coke bottle glasses. Hi, Frank. Sally has a matte knife in his hand and uses it to cut some linoleum he's laying out on top of the wood floor of the entry. Frank ignores him, surveys the entry, then walks into the adjacent living room, glimpsing as he goes at 2 young Italian guys in the kitchen playing cards. Sally Bugs comes in, parts the blinds, and looks out. Chucky's late. Chucky was Jimmy's foster son. He was in the thing too, but didn't know it. Sally Bugs sees a car pulling up to the curb. Is that him? A Mercury pulls up with just the driver in it. A guy wearing a wide-collared paisley shirt and gold chains like he's in Saturday Night Fever. Frank nods. All Chucky knew, he was picking up one of Pro's guys. Sally, who didn't know him, and me, who he didn't know. And we were all picking up his dad at the Red Fox for a meeting. He was in it, as you say, stupidly. Frank and Sally Bugs come out of the house and approach the Mercury. I felt sorry for Chucky. If anyone deserves to be forgiven, it's him. I'm Sally. Hi, Frank. Chucky. Let's go. I don't want your father yelling at me for being late. You can sit in front, Frank. Frank isn't sure he wants to sit in front. Sally Bugs, you may remember, strangled that poor Teamsters secretary treasurer in the front seat. But Sally already has the car's back door open and is sliding in. What the fuck is this? What? It's wet back here. I had a frozen fish I had to drop off to someone. A fish? The seat is wet from a fish? Sorry. Sally Bugs lays his handkerchief on the seat and sits on it. Frank climbs into the front passenger seat. Chucky makes a right off 7 Mile Road onto Telegraph. What kind of fish? I don't know, a fish to eat. You don't know what kind? No. Where'd you get it? At a fish place. Frank checks his watch. It's 2:40. They pull into the parking lot as Jimmy is coming out of the restaurant. Chucky taps the horn and waves. Jimmy regards the Mercury for a moment, then comes over to it. Sorry I'm late. You're late? What the fuck you even doing here? Who invited you? Hi, Jimmy. Who the fuck are you? I'm with Tony. You're with Tony. You're with this cocksucker who's late again. I'm not waiting for this cocksucker again. He's supposed to be here at 2:30. It's 2:40. I don't wait for anyone more than 10 minutes. Motherfucking cocksuckers. He's at the house. What house? He's with Russ. He's with Russ. What the fuck is going on here? Look who's here. Jimmy leans down to see who's in the passenger seat. Hi, Jimmy. Frank. Where were you? You're supposed to be here at 2. What is this? Russell decided to come, but not here. He doesn't know the place. It's not comfortable for him. Russell's here? Frank nods. Jimmy relaxes a little. Get in. We'll bring you back after to get your car. Sally Bugs pushes open the back door for Jimmy to get in, and the image freezes. No way in a million years Jimmy would ever get into a car with one of Pro's guys in it, unless I was in it too, which is why I was in it. I made it safe. The image unfreezes. Sally Bugs taps the seat next to him. There was a fish in here, but I cleaned it up. What? Chucky had a fucking fish in here. He doesn't know what kind, but it's okay now. I wiped it up. You put a fish in here? In your car? For Bobby Holmes. Bobby likes fish. I cleaned it up. It's all right. Jimmy looks at Frank again as if to ask, is it all right? Frank nods. Jimmy gets into the back seat next to Sally. Chucky, never put a fish in your car, unless it's wrapped up good. I know. The Mercury pulls out of the lot. The Mercury drives the same route Frank took earlier. Frank, you couldn't come by at 2 and tell me this? I had to wait for 40 minutes like a moron. I come as soon as I got in. You got in this morning. I didn't. Russell had some business in Port Clinton this morning. This morning, okay, but it's afternoon. All due respect to Russ, but no one come over at 2 and tell me it was 2:30 at the very least? I'm sorry. I apologize. Like Sally's not there. Who the fuck is Pro sending this fucking errand boy? Sally is not staying. That's right, he's not staying, but Pro sent him is the point. He should have come and picked me up himself. Can you even see out of those glasses? I can see, Jimmy. The Mercury pulls into the driveway behind the Buick and the Ford and idles. Jimmy and Frank get out. Sally Bugs comes out and gets into the passenger seat. As Chucky backs the car out, Jimmy and Frank head for the house. Jimmy, as he always does, with whoever he's with, walks ahead. You got your friend with you? Glancing back, he sees Frank touch the small of his back. Good. You never know with this cocksucker, with or without Russ there. He opens the front door. As soon as he's inside, Jimmy knows there's a problem. He should hear voices, but it's quiet, and there's no one in the living room, which he can see from here. There's a badly cut piece of linoleum under his feet. He knew right away what it was. We see 5 quick vignettes. Tony Pro playing Greek rummy with some guys at his Union Hall in New Jersey. Tony Salerno watching a soccer game on TV. Fitz on a golf course chipping a ball out of a sand trap. Russell napping in the back of Frank's Cadillac parked on the Port Clinton airstrip. Irene Sheeran and Carrie Buffalino smoking cigarettes in the Motel coffee shop. Just not my part of it. Let's get out of here, Frank. As Jimmy bumps past Frank to leave, grasping the knob of the door Frank just closed, Frank shoots him twice behind his right ear. He slumps to the floor. Blood runs onto the temporary linoleum. Frank tries to open the door, but Jimmy's body is against it. He gently tugs Jimmy away from it and gets it open. Sets the .22 on Jimmy, walks out and closes the door. Port Clinton, later. The plane taxis to a stop on the airstrip. The pilot, careful not to look at Frank, lowers the steps for him. He comes down them and crosses to the Cadillac where Russell is napping. Frank climbs in and starts it up. Russell wakes as the car pulls out. Just by looking at Frank, he can tell the little errand in Detroit has been taken care of. Anyway, I hope you had a pleasant flight. I hope you had a good sleep. And that's it. They drive in silence. Jimmy's lawyer's daughter comes down the aisle on the arm of her father. The church is packed, and a lot of them are wiping at tears with Kleenex. Frank doesn't have Kleenex. He wouldn't use it if he did. He quickly wipes at his eyes with the back of his hand. His daughter Peggy glances at him curiously. Russell glances over less curiously at Frank, looks down at the gold ring he gave him, and watch Jimmy gave him. The wedding march is swallowed up by the roar of trucks on the highway. Sitting in the passenger seat, Frank has the same expression of grief and remorse on his face, but he's 20-some years older. He looks out the window of the car as it passes Howard Johnson's. A TV broadcasts a news report on Hoffa's disappearance. He's been missing a couple of days now. Frank comes in from outside, takes his coat off, regards the TV and his wife and daughters who are watching it. Still no word? Irene shakes her head no. Frank pours himself a drink. I should call Joe. You haven't called her yet? I'm calling her now. Irene turns back to the TV report. Peggy doesn't. She studies her father. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe I looked hard instead of worried, or that I should have been rushing out to hurt somebody and wasn't. Whatever it was wrong. And just by looking at me, she knew. Peggy watches her father turn and head upstairs. She stopped talking to me that day. August 3rd, 1975. She has a good job and lives outside Philly now, but my daughter Peggy disappeared from my life that day. Alone in his bedroom, Frank sits on the edge of his bed, dialing a phone. He can hear the reports from downstairs faintly up here, as people who know nothing theorize about the disappearance. The call connects. Joe, it's Frank. Whatever you need, anything I can do, I'm here. She's crying now. He puts the receiver to his head like it's a gun, and then back to his ear. It's gonna be all right. I'm sure he's all right. The two Italians who were playing cards in the kitchen lift a body in a black garbage bag from the trunk of the Buick. Not that it was any of my business, but Russell told me later they cremated Jimmy at a funeral parlor a mile from the house. The two men carry the body to the back door of the funeral parlor. They put him in a box and fired up the oven. A pine coffin burns in a cremation oven. The oven burns so hot it melts everything. Bones, teeth, watch, rings, but leaves the shape of the body, like Pompeii. The cinders of the coffin fall away to reveal an ashy body. It comes out and someone pokes at it, dissolving it to ashes. It was no more complicated than that. The father of the bride from the wedding, attorney Bill Buffalino, sits at the defense table. His client, Frank, is being questioned by the DA. Everyone who ever had anything to do with Jimmy was hauled in and questioned, and everyone took the fifth, which is what you do. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer that question under the protection afforded me by the Constitution. Let me ask you this. What color is my pen? On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to... Frank and his lawyer head for the back exit. Still, everyone got indicted and convicted for one thing or another, just not for that. Nobody, as you know, ever went to jail for that. And no one talked, which is unusual since usually 3 people can keep a secret only when 2 are dead. The 2 Italians playing cards in the kitchen. The Andretta brothers got 20 years for squeezing cash out of a trucking company in exchange for labor peace. Tony Pro walks down a cell block with other inmates. Pro was convicted with them, but he was already back in school for that other thing I mentioned before. The man in the passenger seat finds the radio station he wants and sits back. The poor secretary-treasurer who got more votes than Pro, which they finally got him on. As the nylon rope loops around the guy's neck to strangle him, Coke bottle glasses on a face come into frame. Sally Bugs, you recall, did that one. From very far away, someone watches Sally Bugs walk away from his car to the building. Sally was seen going into a federal building. This by itself isn't a crime. Everyone has to do that sometimes, but Sally, who knows better, didn't tell anybody about it, which you must always do. When you don't, it can only mean one thing. You're not going there for tea. Sally comes out of the Andrea Doria Social Club. I suppose there is a chance it wasn't that, but when in doubt, have no doubt. Frank and John Francis walk up to him. Hi, Sal. Hi, Frank. Sally looks at John Francis, who he doesn't know. As he waits for an introduction, Frank shoots him twice in the head, one of the bullets coming out, shattering a lens of his thick glasses. Sally was dead by the time he hit the ground, but to discourage anyone with the idea to look out their window after 2 shots, Johnny gave him 3 more. John Francis pumps 3 shots into Sally's body. Tony Salerno on a surgical table getting a colonoscopy. Tony Salerno they got in an income tax thing. The same week, he was diagnosed with cancer. In the Villa de Roma, Russell has what seems to be a very cordial conversation with another man at his table. Russell got hooked threatening to strangle Jack Napoli over $25,000 worth of jewelry he took on credit and never paid for. That's what it is, Jack. Russell is escorted out of the restaurant by federal agents. Napoli was rigged. They had it on tape. They called it extortion, though it was Napoli who was clearly in the wrong. Frank's car inches through a car wash covered in suds. They got me for my Cadillac. I bought it from Eugene Baffa, who leased truck drivers to freight companies and paid them substandard wages, skimming the difference. Frank peers through soapy windows of the car wash at his Cadillac, as leather tongues from the ceiling shimmy and sway and push the suds around. They said I paid under market value for the car, and I had no receipts to prove otherwise. They said the car was a bribe to let Baffa continue to pay his non-union wages. Frank watches the Cadillac as spray hoses rinse it and the dryer blowers switch on. I loved that car, but it wasn't worth the 18 years they gave me for it. A remote prison sat down amidst bare trees. We all went to Sandstone, Minnesota, which is no Lewisburg. It's up by the Canadian border, where it's colder than Philly, New York, and Chicago put together. Bundled up against the cold, Russell, Salerno, and some other old inmates in wheelchairs roll bocce balls down the snow-patched ground. Frank, who's getting no younger himself, watches from the sidelines. Russell got Parkinson's there. Tony Salerno couldn't control his urine anymore. The arthritis in my hands moved to my back, and neuropathy was in my feet. I couldn't feel either one of them. Neurontin helped a little bit, but it also makes you dingy. If you take it at night, okay, but during the day, it makes you forgetful. We were all falling apart, and the freezing fucking cold wasn't helping. Frank comes in with a paper bag, shuffles across the cafeteria. I needed a cane, but they won't give you a cane in prison since you could use it as a weapon. He sits with Russell. You got it? Frank nods, takes the prosciutto bread out of the bag and begins breaking it into pieces. Eventually, Jimmy was a nice man, nice family. I didn't want it to go that far. I know. Frank pours 2 glasses of grape juice. I should have protected you some other way. I can't forgive myself for what I did to you. It's all right. Russell regarding his shaking hands as he tries to steady it enough to dip a piece of bread in the juice. Is this my punishment? Frank waits for Russell on the so-called bocce court with other old inmates. Spots him in his wheelchair as it's pushed by another inmate the other way. Where you going? To church. To church? Don't laugh. You'll go too when the time comes. Frank watches Russell as his wheelchair rolls along the frozen earth. Russell went to church. Then he went to prison hospital in Springfield. Then he went to the graveyard. The number of people in attendance at the graveyard seems too small for someone of Russell's stature. I got out that October. Irene died in December. December 17th. Lung cancer. No surprise. Frank stands at his wife's grave with 3 of his grown daughters, supporting himself on aluminum canes like a polio victim. Peggy is there, but stands apart from her sisters and father. He looks at her, but she won't look at him. Frank moves around the house, on his canes, emptying ashtrays of butts with lipstick marks on the filters. He sits in a chair in front of a TV he's not watching, drinking alone. He fills a plastic container marked with the days of the week on it with dozens of pills, gets confused, and starts over. He comes past in his pajamas, negotiating a dark hallway on his canes, trips and falls and can't get up. Assisted living facility. Elderly men and women dot a rec room like checkers on an abandoned board. Some sit at games, dominoes, cards, Candyland. Others regard a television with the sound turned down too low for them to hear. Frank sits apart from them in a wheelchair, the gold watch on his wrist, the gold ring on his finger, his eyes hidden behind aviator sunglasses. He's been here for months. Frank sits in his wheelchair in his room. There's a small framed photograph on his lap. A nurse comes in to take his vitals. As she does, "This is my daughter, Peggy." It's the snapshot of Peggy and Jimmy at the miniature golf course. The nurse gives it a perfunctory glance. "Is it? I don't think I've met her." "She hasn't been around much." "She's your child?" "I have 4 daughters." "Really?" Frank nods. None of them have been around much. "Who's that with her?" "Who's that?" "Relative?" "That's Jimmy Hoffa." "Oh." She clearly doesn't know who that is. Frank doesn't bother telling her. Frank sits with 2 young FBI men in the courtyard. He actually seems pleased to have them here. At least they're visitors. "I'm sorry, but I have to direct you to my attorney, Mr. Regano, if you want to talk about Mr. Hoffa, or any other matter for that matter. I got nothing new to say." "He's dead." "Who's dead?" "Your attorney, Mr. Regano." "He's dead? Who did it?" "Cancer." Frank didn't know. "Everybody's dead, Mr. Sheeran, but Mr. Hoffa's children aren't. They live without knowing, and that's hard to do." Frank actually seems like he might be thinking about talking to them, but then, "You seem like nice fellas, and I appreciate you coming to see me, but I can't help you." An orderly tries to assist Frank as he struggles out of the taxi with his canes. "I got it, I'm fine. You stay here." He comes in on his canes to a bank, stands in a short line, looks around like he's casing the place, makes it to the front, but lets someone go ahead of him so he can wait for a particular window. The customer there leaves and he hobbles towards it. The teller, his daughter Peggy, sees him coming and puts her closed sign up before he gets there. "Peggy, don't." She's walking away from the counter towards the back. "I just want to talk to you, Peggy. I'm dying." Peggy goes through the door and closes it. The other customers look at Frank. The taxi parked outside a small house in Philly. Frank sits with one of his daughters, Dolores. "What do you want me to do?" "Call her. Tell her I want to talk to her." "Talk to her and tell her what?" "I want to tell her I'm sorry. I know I wasn't such a good father. I try to be. I tried to protect her. All of you." "From what?" Now he starts to think about it. He's not sure what. "You have no idea what it was like for us. We couldn't come to you with a problem because of the horrible things you'd do to fix it for us. You thought you were protecting us, but it was the opposite. We didn't get protected because we were too afraid to go to you for protection. We were protected from nothing or anyone ever. You have no idea the things people did to us." "What do they do to you? Why? What are you going to do about it? You can't even walk." Dolores regards him for a moment, and then, "You weren't a bad father. You were a nightmare." A casket store. Another day. They build them and sell them here. It's more like a workshop inside a warehouse. The salesman used to be a rock and roll promoter, but now he does this. He wears a pork pie hat. "I could tell you something else, but I'll tell you the truth. It makes no sense going with anything more expensive than particle board for cremation. Will it be cremation or burial?" "Burial." Frank surveys the rows of caskets from his wheelchair, the orderly by his side. "Is it for a man or a woman?" It's for me. Frank is in a hospital room in his wheelchair, hooked up to IVs, looking through some unframed photographs someone has brought over. The image of his face suddenly changes from film to video as a camera is switched on. He seems out of it. Morphine or dilaudid for all the pain. You saw the Monseigneur? Frank slowly runs a hand through his hair, guided by the morphine. What did you tell him? I told him it's been 60 years since my last confession. What did he say to that? He said that's okay. What else you tell him? That's between me and him. Come on, Frank. I told him I've done some things I'm not proud of. You told him what those things are? He doesn't need details. You don't have to tell him everything to get absolution. It's not required. So you got what you needed from him. I'm at peace. The video camera tilts down to the photos on Frank's lap. There's one of Russell and Frank on top, and then back up to his face. Are you? Frank looks up at the camera with that look of quiet menace we saw before. You're not being clever. You think you are, but you're not. Be satisfied. You got enough. Don't be probing. You didn't tell him about the house. I didn't have to tell him about the house. You're not listening. You don't have to say everything. You do. You don't. I just told you. No, you do. You. It's the last thing you gotta do. Frank knows he's right, but won't admit it. The camera keeps shooting as he leafs through the photos. Eventually, I know what I gotta do. I'm not stupid. I gotta say it. I don't have a fucking chance after this if I don't. I die and I know what I gotta do. He looks up at the camera. Ask me the question. Do you stand by what you've told me? Yeah. Everything. Yeah. The war? Yeah. Whispers, the jeweler, Gallo? Yeah. Sally? Yeah, they deserved it, all of them. I got no remorse. And none for their families? I didn't know their families. You knew Jimmy's. Silence as the camera keeps taping him. It tilts down to the photo that's now on top of his hands. Appreciation night, Jimmy and Frank. And then back up to his face. Did I have any choice? I don't know, did you? If I'd refused, someone else would have done it, and I'd have been dead too. You sure about that? It kills Frank to look at the photograph, but he forces himself to for several more moments before looking back up at the camera. The anguish shows. What kind of a man does what I did to a friend? Silence as the video camera unmercifully records his face, his guilt and remorse. The morphine doesn't dull that. Eventually, Frank, whatever happens now happens, but you stand a slightly better chance now. To himself, "E nelle mani di Dio," like Russell used to say. It's in God's hands. Frank nods. The morphine takes his hand and slowly combs it through his hair again. The camera shuts off, and the image of his face switches from video back to film. He watches as the guy with the video camera, who we still don't see, gathers his stuff. Don't forget. I know, leave the door open a little. Frank nods. His eyes follow the figure as he heads out. I'll come visit you around Christmas. When's Christmas? Few weeks. Christmas is in a few weeks? Yeah. Okay, give my love to your family. I will. I'll see you later. I'm not going anywhere. From outside the room, the door starts to close, but stops just short of covering up our view of Frank in the room. We can just make him out in the sliver of light between the edge of the door and the frame, sitting alone in his wheelchair. The end. Thanks so much for watching and listening, guys. If you made it all the way to the end and you're hearing this, throw a comment below and let me know. I love hearing when you guys enjoy these. Also, comment below with the next movie reading that you would love to hear. I'm making these a lot more frequently now, so if you do make a suggestion, I'll try to get to it as fast as I can. Alright guys, see you in the next one.